Call the Select Board meeting of Tuesday, June 27th to order. And first item of business is approval of the agenda. And we do have an addition, I believe it's 6A? 6A.
Letter of concurrence for the Main Street Merchants Row Bridge project.
Okay, and we do have need for executive session on a legal matter?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to amend the agenda to add item number 6A.
Yes, please.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda as amended, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so now we have a large attendance for a public input meeting.
We can't hear you back here.
Okay?
Is the sound system on?
No, this is not the sound system for here. It's a sound system for the TV. We now are going to move into public input meeting on the temporary relocation of Actor Transit Hub. And we're going to, this is an opportunity for us to, as a select board, and for the community to look at three options that are currently being looked at, and it's for the temporary relocation period anticipated to start sometime around November of this year and run through conceivably the end of 2020. And at our Select Board meeting, we asked the Planning and Zoning Director, Jen Murray, to undertake the project of looking at the alternative sites and making a recommendation. And so this is Jen's presentation to the board and our opportunity to have some public input. We will not make a decision tonight, but we will undertake some discussion, and we do have our regular. It has to be done no later than at 7 o'clock. So, Jen, with that, if you could lead us through your analysis.
Sure.
So I'll just talk you through the project quickly. I'll give you a little background. Then I'll show you pictures of the three alternatives. And then we'll take some questions from people, some questions and input. And when we do that, I guess I would ask that we just go around and people come up to the mic and ask their question. Does that sound like a good plan?
I think it'd be good so people who are watching it, because this is broadcast, and so the people that are watching it will be wanting to hear the question and the answer.
Okay, so that'll be our plan. Let's get started. So let's just go to the next slide. I want to start with just the general timeline of this. There's a lot of terminology being thrown around, which confuses me too, so I'm just going to reacquaint us with the terminology. An interim location was selected for the Actor Transit Hub that's on Merchants Row now because of the temporary bridges associated with the railroad project. So you've seen them probably in their new interim location, which is at the south end of South Pleasant in front of the former Kohl's Florist. They'll be there approximately 6 months, and then they need to move out to a temporary location, which they'll be at for the duration of the railroad project. So tonight we're talking about different alternatives for the Select Board to consider at their July 11th meeting for locations that would be suitable for this temporary location during the course of the railroad project. And then after that, there will be a permanent location. That's to be determined as well. It may very well be this temporary location that persists after the railroad project, or there may be a need in a few years to choose a new permanent location. So just quickly going through the relocation timeline again. On May 23rd, as Brian said, the Select Board voted to, the Select Board voted to relocate the Actor Transit Hub from Merchants Row to the south end of South Pleasant Street in front of Kohl's Florist. And the same night, the Select Board decided to create a working group to develop a few alternatives from which they can choose which alternative they want to proceed with. But there's still going to be a permitting process for that. So they're choosing a location to partner with Actor on that's in the public right-of-way for Actor to go through design and permitting for, to have their temporary location. So our working group has met a few times. June 1st, 8th, 21st is when we had meetings of the working group, and we've also met once with the infrastructure committee. Tonight is our public input meeting. We're going to have another working group meeting on Friday after this meeting where we talk about some of the things that came up at this meeting before we go to the infrastructure committee a second time on July 6th. And then on July 11th, that's the night that we expect the select board will vote on an alternative. So like Brian said, we're not making any decisions tonight. We're kind of looking ahead toward July 11th. So July through October is going to be the time for designing this temporary location and doing the permitting. So for permitting, there needs to be a work in the right-of-way permit because this is a permanent installation in the public right-of-way, and there needs to be a zoning permit because there will be a structure there. So it'll go through the DRB process like any other application that we have before our board. And November is kind of a target date for having this relocation to the temporary location complete. Dan, can you hear me okay? Okay. Just quickly, I thought you might want to know who's on the actor relocation working group. It's a consortium of actor personnel and town staff members just trying to talk through the pros and cons of different locations. And then after, when it goes through the design and permitting process, engineers will have a hand at this too, at further tweaking this design. Then during the DRB process, if there's still concerns about the location, the DRB can create conditions to make sure that there's, you know, maybe better lighting if you're worried about security or some small tweak like that. So there's plenty of opportunities for input as this goes along. Let's go to the next one. There were some previous studies done for where to put the transit hub. Between 2014 and 2015, VHB conducted operational impact study, and that study was amended a few different times. In 2016, the local project management team, the LPMT, stood on the shoulders of those studies and did their own ranking and rating of different alternatives. They used a set of different criteria, and I think it was 6 people on the LPMT that decided which one looked the best. So now we're moving on to this process. Here's the first of the 3 alternatives that we're looking at. So on the right, I gave you a picture as it exists today. Again, this will be tweaked and re-engineered, and you know, some of it's based on your input tonight. I'll just quickly run through some of the pros and cons that we've discovered as a group on this alternative. This is the north end of South Pleasant Street. So just to orient you, here's the Soldiers Monument here. Merchants Row goes down like this, so this is the very north end. And here's the Town Hall Theater and in on the green. So this plan shows several different buses parked along here. There's a Jersey barrier here that keeps these buses in place. This is a plan that was developed by Actor and VHB, right, Bill?
Yes.
Yep. Actor and VHB worked on this plan, and this is the sort of the original plan that we've kind of keyed on. Since then, we've developed 2 other alternatives as well.
I will say it's just a conceptual plan. There's modifications that have already been done to that plan.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to say anything about how this works operationally, or should I just keep winging it here?
I would press.
Okay. Stop me if there's anything on this. So there's a concrete barrier here that goes down the middle, because if people are leaving the bus, they can't be in the road. So they'll be between the bus and the concrete barrier, and they'll come out and they'll exit here, where a new crosswalk will be installed over toward Town Hall Theater. This particular orientation requires South Pleasant Street to change to one-way south. So some of the pros and cons that we've noticed as a group as we've looked at this. This plan does result in the permanent loss of 7 parking spaces along the east side. It could be as many as 9. Approximately 200 feet of east curb line would need removal, and it would need to be relocated about 2 feet. The Jersey barrier and the bus shelter and the platform and the driving lane don't all fit within the existing footprint, so power poles may need to be relocated. Street lighting is not as good as the other 2 alternatives. There is a need to change this to one-way, and Public Works felt that the one-way traffic would really limit traffic flow in downtown. I would agree with that. This is not currently on one of their existing bus routes, so it could potentially impact operations. The Planning Commission has concern about the historic character of the neighborhood. There's nice old homes along South Pleasant Street, and now there's going to be vehicles parked in front of them, it could impact these abutters here and here, especially this bed and breakfast and how he conducts his business. It doesn't really fit with the town's master plan in terms of their vision for that street. There's snow plowing issues. Passengers obviously can't offload onto the sidewalk, so there's the need to have a concrete barrier. There is some queuing here, so the buses won't be able to leave independently. You'll have to wait for the first bus to leave for everybody else to go. There's no real room for bus overflow. This is about as many as you get. Difficult sightline for bus drivers exiting the mid-block bus lane. All buses have to take a right turn at Cross Street and then go through the roundabout and back east, because it's difficult when you get to the bottom of South Pleasant to take a left there. So they would have to continue doing what they're doing now, which is everyone going right and through the circle. There is a visual impact to abutters, pinch points for traffic and parking. No long-term parking areas in this immediate vicinity. And so for those reasons, it is ranking the lowest of the three alternatives for myself and Public Works, but it still does rank as the highest alternative for Actor. I don't know if there's any pros that I left out of that list that you want to throw out. It has the least operational impacts for you, as far as you can tell, right?
Why don't you go through it, Jen, and then what I'd like to do is basically go back and tell you why. Thank you for having Actor here. And I'm Adam Lucci, I'm chair of the board of Actor, so I would like to speak for them, for Actor tonight. And just after you present, I guess I'd like the opportunity to go through it.
Oh, I'd much rather have you share the pros now. I've listed cons, so please, do you have any pros for this location?
Well, absolutely, it's our preferred location. And Bill is our operations manager and can speak to it probably better than I can. But so let me just say a little bit about Actor, if I can.
Can you use the mic so that the
Sure,
homeowners...
absolutely. So
You can take a
I'll
seat.
just take a seat. So thank you for having us here. This is a really important meeting to Actor because this is our hub. This is our central location. Basically, all of our buses run through this, which means all of our bus schedules run through this. And we need to make sure that the buses connect. I handed out everybody a brochure of Actor, and this is our annual report. Actor gives about 180,000 rides in the community, and that's the region, in a year. It's not all buses. But the vast majority of it is, and the vast majority of those flow through this hub. We say it's transportation for everyone. We're here to serve your community. We're here to serve the regional community. But there are a lot of people in Middlebury and Addison County that are transit dependent or choose to use our services for environmental reasons or economic reasons. But I estimated about 27% of people in any given place are transit dependent. So if you think of elderly people or younger or even middle-aged tweens, children, disabled people, people who can't drive for other reasons, and then there are the people that want to use it. So it's a significant portion of your community that uses Actor's services. When we look at where and we appreciate the opportunity to serve your community, and we want to do it well. So when we were evaluating the sites, basically we looked at what we're going to call 3 S's. Their safety, their service to our riders and to your community, and their scheduling. And we really looked at them in that order. We would say the biggest benefit of this site is safety. It gets us in a relatively low traffic area, especially as relates to College Street and to Seymour Street. The traffic on South Pleasant Street is a little less. It's kind of out of the way. And with the barriers that we've drawn in there, and again, it's a conceptual plan, but it gives us basically the ability to control or isolate a lot of the pedestrian traffic to your downtown that we will be generating, and we think that control creates a safer situation. So from a safety perspective, this is our first choice, and that's primarily the reason. From a service perspective, we believe this is the best choice because it's the closest to the downtown. It's the closest to where our riders, your citizens, want to get to. The closest to the post office, to the downtown businesses, to the services. And given who our clients are, that's important to a lot of them. We also think it may be able to help Middlebury during the construction because buses don't require nearly as much parking as individual cars do, and we can transport people in and out and get people to your downtown businesses. So we think that's an important plus of this particular place. The third plus that we would say would be scheduling. While it's not on a route, it's immediately adjacent to our existing hub. And will have the least impact on basically our scheduling. And again, because this isn't just one bus stop, it's the hub, it's where everything runs into. And if you move the hub across town, you can add 10 minutes per run. You start having a number of buses, so let's see, I think we get about an average of 160 people disembarking and embarking at this every day, at this location every day. If you get a lot of buses coming together, it really impacts our schedule. It's like throwing a pebble in a pond and just having the ripples go out. And, you know, it does affect our tri-town services a lot when you take and move the schedule across getting across Middlebury. A little bit can have a big difference on our schedules. So for all those reasons, this is Actor's preferred alternative. I think I'll stop there for right now, and we can talk about the other ones.
Adam, I'm sorry, what did you say the second S was?
So it's safety, service,
Service.
yeah, service
you.
to our clients and to your community, and schedule. So thank you.
Jen, if I might quickly add a couple points. Snow plowing, it is an issue that we've acknowledged. We don't believe it's a fatal flaw. College Street is one way also. So there'd be similar, although perhaps different. No more loss of parking here than anywhere else. Perhaps even more loss of parking at some of the other locations, but we can look at that down the road. Bus overflow will be the same at all locations. Everybody remembers Merchants Row where we had to stop out into the street. Bus queuing here is challenged, but it is at Coles as well. Operationally, we can overcome that bus queuing issue. So some of these issues that were brought up will be the same at all of the issues, all of the areas.
While we're at it, Dan, did you have anything to add that I may have missed from our working group discussions? I'm just speaking to working group members right now. If you feel like you're being ignored, just hang on 1 second.
Yeah, I'd just like to redirect. It is known that we will lose at least 7 or 9 parking spaces. And there was some consideration about angle parking on South Pleasant Street. Let's keep in mind that those angle parking take 19 feet. So those bumpers would be at the center line of the existing road today if it was even possible to fit them in. So there will be loss of parking there.
Dan is also on our working group. You know him from Public Works. Bill, you're on Public Works as well. Have I kind of hit all the different points?
Yeah, I did have to step out for a minute, so I didn't get all of this done. I would just say that there are some safety concerns that we have with this location.
And we've also taken input from Dave Shaw in the corner there and Tom Hanley from Police and Fire. So this was sort of where we were at in May as well. You know, Actor has their reasons that they like the location, and then some town staff members have their reasons why it's problematic, and the select board has a difficult decision ahead of them weighing all these pros and cons, for sure. But we do have 2 other alternatives that we've worked on a little bit that we can present now, or would you prefer to take public input on this while it's fresh in people's minds?
Seems like we should.
I'd rather process all 3 personally, but the board?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
all
we
three
need,
first and then
Yeah.
talk.
Okay, so if you don't mind holding your comments till the end, we'll take comments on all 3 all at once.
This isn't really a comment, it's a safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding the safety of people going around the green in the wrong direction. I spoke with 5 bus drivers yesterday, 2 of whom mentioned near head-on collisions. One mentioned 3 yesterday, and that was one of the Middlebury shuttle bus drivers, of people coming on out of South Pleasant Street going directly across.
Okay.
The best thing the town could do, where the active hub is not withstanding, is to make South Pleasant Street one direction south for the safety of the number of people that travel the wrong direction at the bottom of the green. It's a serious problem. Ask the drivers. They're on that intersection many times every day.
Just so you know, just contextually, we had somebody at the last meeting say the safest thing we could do was go the other direction one way because it's tough for the people entering Cross Street turning left, and it's very dangerous. So it's not a cut and dry solution
These
here.
are complex problems. Would it be okay to go on to the next alternative? Okay. So our next alternative is Seymour Street. Seymour Street is something that was dealt with pretty extensively in 2014 and 2015, and it rose to the top in those studies as a preferred alternative. Although I must say that the location along Seymour has shifted a little bit from time to time. Right now, what we're thinking about is up here in the upper part of Seymour. This is Rice Restaurant, in case anyone's sitting too far away to see it. Here's Rice Restaurant, Coldwell Banker. Here's the railroad going along this side. So we had originally looked at an alternative that had all the buses on one side of Seymour, and now we're looking at an alternative that has them sort of on both sides of Seymour. Some pros and cons related to this one. The rail project will be using a U-wall construction here. So the railroad project will be ending up at the end of the project reconstructing this sidewalk here. So this looks really nice at the end of the rail project. There may be some problems doing this during the rail project, also because there's a construction exit in this area. So this may be a little congested during the rail project, but might be really nice to think about for a permanent location down the line. So the sidewalk is, right, so the site would be used as a construction equipment exit. We just talked about that. Adequate parking and staging area. What did you mean by that, Dan? Oh yeah, you need to leave adequate room for the construction project to park and stage.
Yeah, if you can point to on the screen temporarily, that's the northern arrow where it says parking spaces, or parking remains. Yeah, right there is where the construction equipment is going to exit this site intermittently. And so, like Jen says, after the railroad project is complete, this could fit pretty well. But during the project, there's going to be construction in and out of there, or mostly out of it from that area. So by adequate parking and staging, there's unused low priority parking from the blue boxes on the west side going north. Those parking spots down there are not used often, so the loss is not terribly significant. And regional buses could use that same area to pull into also.
And so in that sense, this area is a really nice blank slate for a creative streetscape. There is a lot of room here to do some interesting things. The passengers could unload directly onto the sidewalk in this location on one side. The lighting would be similar to South Pleasant. Bi-directional bus drop-off is a possibility. There's less physical investment than Pleasant Street. We started thinking about trying to maybe relocate to a place where there's already existing infrastructure. So there would be less investment in the Jersey barriers and things than there would be on South Pleasant Street. We would need to add a crosswalk at Methodist Lane. That's shown here in white. This does fit in with bike ped connectivity in the area, and Exchange Street if we ever redevelop Greg's Market. If we want to do some bike ped treatments along here to make this more of a gateway into downtown, it could be complementary to having a transit hub in this location. We had possible fire department conflicts, but that's been resolved because it's further up the street. There is a lot of truck traffic along that street. This could be a site that might possibly be used for a rail platform in the future. If that happened, there could be a possibility for a little bit of synergy between a rail platform and a transit hub. It just seems like this is an area of town that's sort of taking off from a transit perspective. But from actors' perspective, it's I'm going to say difficult, if not impossible, from your perspective, I think, to take a left at the Congregational Church, and you had some concerns about crossing Main Street traffic to get onto Seymour Street. So that's a good segue into if Adam has more comments on this location.
Okay. Thanks, Jen. Seymour Street was one of the projects, or one of the locations that VHB did initially look at. Again, and I guess I'd ask you to think of it from our perspective of safety, service, and schedule. So from a safety standpoint, we do believe that the left-hand turn basically into the Emma Willard Triangle is a fatal flaw for us in our buses. We think it creates both safety hazards and operational constraints, and that's probably the biggest reason that this is our least favorite of the sites. Let's see. So that triangle is definitely a concern. We are still concerned about the fire department. We're further away, but they need to get in and out. There's already a lot of traffic on Seymour Street. That intersection can back up going into the main hub. We also are concerned about, let's see, both sides operationally create some safety concerns for us, and also some scheduling concerns. Since they're a little bit more spread out and our passengers are walking, our transfers will take a little bit longer. Jen's right about the streetscape, but again, given from a service perspective, we believe that most of our customers, our clients, would rather be closer to downtown, because that's where they're headed. They're headed to the businesses and the services downtown. And being closer, given a lot of them are elderly or disabled or things like that, really helps us with our service. So again, given the safety, the service, and the scheduling constraints, this is our least favorite of the three alternatives. And I will say we might have a couple other variants on a couple other alternatives as well for you. I think I will stop there. Thank you.
Are you saying it's number 3 for service and scheduling? You talked about safety.
We think it's the worst for safety.
Yeah.
And again, this is so.
I was just wondering if you ranked them for all those. That's what I was sort of thinking after the first round. So, but you were just talking and sort of giving examples rather than ranking them.
Yes, we don't. I don't have a matrix for all of them. But those are the three things that we really focused on, and
that's cool.
And it's the safety that causes it to fall off. I'd also say that this is for a site during the period of construction, not necessarily a permanent location. So, given that you've got trucks and traffic exiting there, it's just another reason it's not a good spot. Thanks.
2 questions. One for you, Adam.
Oh, sure.
So the predominant issue with safety is the left-hand turn?
Yes.
And what if they took a right and came down, went around, and headed back out?
During construction, I'm not sure they'd be able to, or it'd be.
Well, there wouldn't be when it's closed. It could until the traffic was closed, and at which time the left-hand turn would not be a safety issue because there's no downhill traffic.
Left-hand turn, go back to the UPS model. They model their routes on right-hand turns so that you keep your schedule going. We would have to take a right-hand turn. When we got down to Merchants Row, that's a left-hand turn. That's difficult. We'd probably end up having to go around the roundabout, which would add additional time. Keeping safety and schedule in mind, it would just, it's not workable. We took a really good hard look at this after you directed the additional study. One of the larger concerns is the passengers are all spread out. So when a bus comes in, they're in the shelter and they're looking to see which bus is theirs. They've got to scurry here, scurry there. At some points, we could have 5 buses queued with the regional bus. We've made some operational changes, so that shouldn't happen, but this just safety-wise and schedule just is our, as Adam said, is our least liked location.
I'd just like to chime in that while we were doing time studies in this location in the
Excuse
bus.
me, could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm sorry, Mary Krogan, I work for Actor.
Okay, thank you.
The sidewalk as built is not safe for passengers to board the buses. The curbing is higher than the median, so it presents a tripping hazard, and it would interfere with deploying the wheelchair lifts.
Okay.
So to load a wheelchair, we would have to get them out on the street somehow and do it within the traffic.
Just trying to clarify, make sure, because there are other alternatives, I want to make sure these other alternatives have been considered. I mean, if your schedule's that tight that a right-hand turn down and around the roundabout is going to put it all off schedule, then that's a pretty tight schedule. I think I would be more concerned about the curbing than you taking a right-hand turn out of there.
Well, the left-hand turn was would be the way to go north, but if you're right, if you're coming down.
I don't think you can take a left-hand turn out of there. You take a right and come, and I mean, you're leaving your other one, you're having to do a around-the-block turn to go north, and I guess I don't see why you couldn't go an around-the-block turn to head north coming out of Seymour Street as well.
I'm sorry, Brian, I didn't follow you.
So you're headed towards Cross Street on the other one, right?
Correct.
So you're headed south, and you're going to do a right and a right and a right, and come up and take a left to head north out of Burlington, right?
And left at the Court Street light.
Is that, well, are you going to come through town and head out, or are you going to go up through the Court Street light and head north?
Probably at the Court Street light.
Okay. Well, I guess I could get a tractor trailer out of there safely too, headed north, but he wouldn't go take a left at the Congregational Church, is my point.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then the other question for Dan, can you go back to that picture? Just specify to me, Dan, I'm more concerned where that construction traffic is going to be.
So what we've learned is that I believe they are going to use this area here to come out at periods of time when they're building this.
That's their access point?
Well, most of the access is going to be down south.
I thought it was down behind the Redemption Center.
They said they were going to use some of this for an exit. Now,
okay.
If something's changed in the last few months, I don't know. But at some point, big picture-wise, there's some chatter that if we do a rail platform, this would be a good location for that because of the U-channel, it brings the grade up, and the sidewalk that's going to be improved all the way to the old depot might work. I mean, that's down the road. And when we talked in our working group, a bus terminal really doesn't need to be at a platform. It just needs to be serviced by a bus stop. And that was Jim's thoughts, and I totally agree with that. But we all know that this intersection down here, regardless of which way you're going, coming from Emma Willard or from Seymour going across to Emma Willard, it's a tough spot. And,
yeah.
I think we noted that. It's just hard.
Okay.
I'm just going to go back. From a passenger point of view, I think this is probably one of the worst due to the fact that you have buses on both sides, one crosswalk. And most people, as we know, don't even utilize the crosswalk. And like the gentleman up front was saying, when people are looking for a bus, you know, especially depending on the ability to access the bus, what happens is they're going to be targeted, they're going to be crossing, obviously not a crosswalk, not a full, but a lot of people are going to be like, oh, I have to get the bus to, you know, the south bus, and it might be on the other side. They just zoom, right across. As we all know, we've had that issue even on Merchants Rep. So, I mean, for that right here, I think that's probably not a good idea of buses on both sides.
So, you know, when staff decided that South Pleasant was really hard from our operational standpoint in terms of what we do with the town, we tried really hard to brainstorm reasonable alternatives. So Seymour rose to the top because it was mentioned in all those studies. So this is good that we're getting new information about Seymour. The other thing that we tried to do was to really keep our alternatives within downtown, because we know that it's very important for Actor to be within downtown. We didn't want to get too far away from the center of downtown, whether you consider that to be down at the end of Merchants Row or you consider the center of downtown to be here, which is debatable. I debate this with people all the time. So this ended up rising to the top as an idea for how do we keep them in downtown. How about right here, where they're already coming through the circle all the time anyway. This is the location at the corner of College Street and Academy Street. So this is now a nice parking lot and green park here. Weybridge Street, this is Weybridge Street that you're seeing on the top. So there's already an existing bus station right here on this corner.
Bus stop.
Oh, sorry, what did I say? Station.
Station.
Hub, station, stop. Bus stop right on this corner. And we're proposing to put your bus shelter here on this corner because this is town-owned land. So it's just easier to keep it in our right-of-way. So the working group worked with this, and then we had, I think, a real breakthrough a couple days ago, and Actor has some other iterations of this that we're going to discuss in our meeting on Friday that make things easier from their perspective as well. I'll just quickly go through pros and cons that our group came up with. This site really jumped out at us because it's the least amount of effort to design a bus facility compared to the other sites. It's really easy. It's just sort of just plug and chug according to this. This takes up some existing spaces that are there now. A move to this location could be made quickly. Time is of the essence, and this would require the least amount of engineering design work. Existing parking spots along the streets are mostly vacant all day long, and this lot here is underutilized as well. So there's plenty of room for long-term parking. It fits in with the park and ride, which is down here. Theoretically, somebody could stop at the park and ride, and if their legs were good, they could come up the stairs and hop on the bus or vice versa. You'd have places to park your car if you were catching a bus to somewhere else. There's bicycle parking facilities already existing in the new park. We mentioned that there's already a bus stop here. 2 of the 5, we looked at the schedule and noticed that 2 of the 5 Actor routes already circulate this bus stop. So theoretically, it could keep some of the bus routes out of the mayhem of the construction downtown. If they came and circulated and the transit hub was right here, they wouldn't need to go into the construction to drop people off at the transit hub. The bus stop approach is highly visible to waiting riders. All right, so not only is the park and ride nearby, but there's an EV charging station down in that lot too, if that's your flavor. Lighting, wayfinding, signage, it's all in this area already, so it already has existing infrastructure and streetscape improvements and sidewalks. The sidewalk is long along College Street and Academy Street, wide along College Street and Academy Street, so there's a nice wide sidewalk to drop people on as well. No unusual or extraordinary snow plowing efforts are needed. I keep directing this at the crowd. I suppose I should be talking to you guys too. You'll forgive me for that, right? Okay. Lighting is adequate. It's the best of the 3 sites. Regional buses can access and egress the site easily. Academy Street is already one way, so we're used to what that looks like. If there is some queuing along here, Dan has indicated that you could adjust the timing of the light down here to relieve some of this flow, so it's something that we can tweak and play with over time. It allows more buses to queue and depart individually, which I would have to believe would be a benefit. You wouldn't have to wait for the first bus to leave, like in the South Pleasant scenario. You could leave in whatever order you wished. And then at our working group meeting, Actor did say we had concerns about merging into College Street traffic, that there is some busy traffic coming down College Street. And some concerns about traffic flow onto Academy, although again, the signal timing could be adjusted, and these are things we might be able to work on through the design. And so that's, I think, where we're going on Friday when we look at some of the alternatives that Actor's throwing back to the working group. And lastly, beverages, food, and ice cream are available nearby. So that's the three alternatives. I don't know if, did you want to take comments from the board before the crowd, or?
Well, I want to hear Adam's points on this.
Adam. Sorry, how could I forget?
All right, thank you. So Jen's right. We like this one better than Seymour Street. We still believe it, again, looking at our principles, safety, service, and schedule, it's not as good as the north end of South Pleasant Street, or even the location in the center of South Pleasant Street where we are now. I guess I'll just run through them as far as safety concerns. That is, College Street is a busy street. You've got about 4,000 cars that go up and down College, or up College Street every day. And to have a bus stop in the middle of that is of significant concern to us. The intersection of College and Academy and Weybridge Street is already a pretty difficult intersection. If you line 4 buses up along College Street on the right-hand side, the cars coming out of Weybridge Street are going to have a very hard time seeing somebody coming down College Street. Let's see, there's a lot of crosswalk and shuttling back and forth for our passengers. So those are basically the safety concerns that we see. So higher traffic, higher pedestrian volumes. As far as service goes, we do see it has some service benefit, potentially some service benefits to some people going up to the college. But we also, again, feel that the location at South Pleasant Street is closer to the downtown, closer to the core services and businesses that our clients want to access, and therefore a preferred location from a service standpoint. From a schedule standpoint, this is the biggest change for us. And again, it's not just one bus stop, it's the hub. It's basically moving everything. And we start, if you move Tri-Town shuttle in particular across town, so that coming from basically Virgins, Bristol to the north and come through town, we're going to add significantly to those routes, and it's really going to have a significant impact on that schedule. It also, a lot of our college services start down here in our current configuration. If we bring it up there, it may benefit to a certain extent, but it's really going to, I'll say, mess up those schedules, because people may want a bus from here, from the center of town, but if you move it up there, there may be no point to those services. So it's really going to have a big ripple effect throughout our service, our system service. But again, in priority, safety, service to our customers, schedule are our concerns, and those are some of our concerns about here. We do have some other alternatives for College Street that involve basically using the parking lot and/or Academy Street as a bus area. And we'll be happy to share those with you. And we sent them to Jen just yesterday because we've been thinking about them for this meeting. I don't know if we want to go through all of them right now for you.
No, like I said, we're going to deal with those on Friday in our working group meeting.
Yeah, well, that's
we haven't had a chance
what
yet.
I just suggested.
It's so great that you went through this thorough list of all the issues. It's really great. Maybe you could come to that working group meeting on Friday or give me some copies of that. So that
Yeah, we absolutely will.
That's wonderful.
So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Is there a throw, in my mind, there may be a throwaway option here that we should get out of the mix, but it maybe not. I mean, is the Seymour Street a legitimate option given the considerations they've given us?
Well, I'd like to hear from the maybe, but I'd like to hear.
Well, I'm not interested in a whole lot of testimony if it's a throwaway option.
Yeah,
but
that's
if
true.
If you're taking it as a serious option, then
Threw me for a loop. Let me think.
I'm just trying to focus. We got a lot of people here who want to talk, I think, and if they're...
I think from staff's point of view, that's the one that they wanted the most when they came
No,
to when they came to the infrastructure committee. But that's the only thing I can think of.
So I'm not hearing that that's staff's or
Right.
actors' preference. So, I mean, and there's safety issues. I see the safety of having buses across the street on each side as the greatest safety risk, as a rider pointed out.
I'm tempted, but usually when I'm tempted, I try and talk myself out of it before I actually go for it. So that was my attempt to talk myself out of it.
Well, I didn't know if the working group could respond to that question. Like you're shaking your head, so it sounds like.
Well, even at the infrastructure committee meeting, we've always liked this option the best,
Okay.
staff-wise. But Seymour, I think we thought that Seymour could end up being a really nice compromise. But now we're hearing fatal
Doesn't
flaws
sound
on
like it.
Seymour, so yeah, maybe that's an alternative we need to eliminate at this point and just stick with the other two.
I think there's
That's
fatal
fine.
flaws there, and I'd rather not spend a whole lot of time talking about it. If we've got limited time, we really want to focus on our two legitimate options. So is the board okay with that?
Works for me.
Unless there's someone here that wants to speak strongly for it, I would pass.
That's a good point. Is there someone here who feels very strongly that it ought to be on Seymour Street? Customers for the restaurant? Yes, ma'am.
Well, to me,
Could
whether
you
you throw
come
out
up and-
that site is somewhat dependent
Excuse
on what
me.
happens.
We
Sorry.
can't hear you. Would you
come
up
up
here?
and introduce yourself, please? Thank you.
So, my name's Pamela Smith. I live at 168 South Pleasant Street, so the most corner home I own. And so to me, whether you throw out one of the options is somewhat dependent on what a decision might be around South Pleasant Street. If you throw that out, that really narrows, obviously, down to two. So I tend to be reluctant to completely throw out a third until we've had a thorough conversation about the impact of the other two sites. Obviously, I care the most about South Pleasant Street. That road already gets incredibly backed up around school times. I often cannot get out of my driveway for extended periods of time, 10, 15 minutes when it's school time. So that's my only reservation about throwing out a third option, is that, you know, then you potentially limit the conversation around whether or not to stick with South Pleasant Street. So I think it makes sense maybe to have it as like the distant third and talk about it as a distant third, but to completely eliminate one option if others aren't fully weighed, I guess makes me
Okay,
nervous.
so you're getting to the point where I was trying to get at. You're very much against South Pleasant Street, obviously. So I think we'd like to hear testimony on the two higher prioritized options in our limited amount of time. If there seems like there's a lot of negativity around both of them, then we have to look at a third option. It may not be Seymour Street. I'm saying there may be a better third option because there was a lot of fatal flaws to Seymour Street.
Yeah.
Is construction, traffic, parking buses across. I'm not okay with Seymour Street right now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me, especially if other third
Yeah.
options are
Yeah.
being considered. I just don't want to limit the considerations too much at
Yeah,
too early a stage, yeah.
And so I guess I'm not interested in to try to. Let's hear your discussion about
About what happens on South Pleasant Street?
on South Pleasant. Yes.
Sure. So already I'm hearing that there's not a lot of traffic, but being a resident on South Pleasant Street, I've seen our street get backed up all the way from my end, from the corner right here, down the entire street, people trying to make left or right turns, particularly at the school times. Right now, the buses being in front of Kohl's makes visibility for trying to get out of driveways really nerve-wracking. Quite a lot of children, you know, Mary Johnson uses that street all the time with truckloads of little children. And so not being able to see around the buses in an area that gets a lot of child traffic. The library's right here. Children are walking from the school to the library. There's a tremendous amount of, frankly, children traffic. Obviously, in the beginning you saw my grandkids, they live there. But that's not really, us watching 2 kids isn't so much the issue as there are a lot of children that use that road, and so having the big blind spots from the buses has been very worrisome to me. And right now, because it's summer, we're not seeing it as much, but I see it year-round, the amount of kids that are in that area. We already have struggles with not getting run over. Putting the little blinking light right next at the top of the bridge has been nice, but lots of people already don't follow that even when it's flashing. And so the notion of having a lot of children there in a relatively blind spot is worrisome to me. So that, I think that's the biggest thing. I think one-way solves some of the problem, but certainly not all of it. The other thing is that street gets a lot of, during busy times downtown where there's not sufficient parking, that street gets used a lot for parking and the overflow parking of downtown. And so to remove so many parking spots from an area that regularly is filled up, I often, there's no place to park on the street because it's already filled. And so in terms of losing parking when it's already the downtown overflow parking spot is also of concern, just frankly, where are those people gonna park when there's no space left downtown? So I think those are the big ones that...
Your blind spots is to do with the temporary spot right now, more so than the proposed?
The proposed permanent? Well, I mean, either way, if you're talking 4 bus lengths, that there's a lot of folks that live on that road. It's a predominantly residential road along that side, so already it's challenging getting out of any of the driveways on that road. So if you're talking about having 4 bus lengths, you're talking about potentially impacting a lot of driveways trying to get out, especially compared to the spot up here you're talking about that doesn't have all that cluster of homes with, kids.
Bill?
This may or may not alleviate that concern. The concept drawing has 2 lanes, one for left-hand turning traffic and one for right-hand turning traffic. All bus traffic would turn right so that we wouldn't queue up 4 back in theory.
And do they all leave at the same time?
In theory, yes, but in reality and practice, no. But you could have 2 or 3 there, and turning right is much easier. They currently turn right and go around the roundabout. We don't allow a left-hand turn. So that should help with that backup.
But all buses leave at one time. Would that put 4 buses at the intersection? They all leave at one time. They can't leave individual. I'd put all buses in a line down through there.
That's why the left-hand and right-hand turn would help.
Would help, yeah. I mean,
But you still could potentially have 4 buses queued up at the end to all turn right at the end.
Potentially.
Because if you have a busy time, you're queuing up 4 buses, they all have to leave. I mean, unless you operationally choose to let the first one go and wait 5 minutes, let the second one go and wait 5 minutes, I imagine that would be a scheduling.
That would be the same at every site.
That would, but here they can't, the third bus can't pull out ahead of the first bus.
Even more difficult at College Street because they'd be doing left-hand.
What happens to the customers who's on the end of the green? Do they gotta wait till all the buses get out of the way or what?
How common it is for all 4 buses to be leaving at the same time? How often does it happen? All 4 buses lined up?
If on schedule, it happens
Quite a bit?
quite a bit.
Okay.
15 times a day.
That's a lot.
23 to 23 would, yeah. In theory, it does happen.
Hold 1 second. I've got you next. Hold on. Did you finish answering the question?
Yeah, I can get you better stats on how many times a day.
Okay.
Press.
So I think we're done, and we need
Yeah,
to, I need to allow people to come up and
Yep,
ask the
yep,
questions.
definitely.
Please, yes,
Come on.
please.
So, could you state your name for the record?
Yes, it's Madeline Field, and I live at 88 South Pleasant Street, the opposite end of South Pleasant Street. So I have similar concerns as this last lady did, and to speak to the bus part of it backing up, I have seen it line up on the other end of South Pleasant Street when it's been on that end of Coles, and it has posed a problem, especially during the school traffic, and even sometimes when they block off traffic to the circle because there's an issue, the water main always breaks on that circle. It's just always happening. So always the traffic is rerouted down our street whenever there's a problem up on the circle. So traffic tends to be horrible on times. I've tried to get out of my driveway, couldn't. I know for a fact where she lives, it's almost impossible to get out of there. Even if there were 2 lanes of traffic, it's impossible. Like, she literally has to squeak through when there's traffic. I guess some of my main concerns are when Merchants Row was shut down, all the parking was taken away, everybody was parked along the street. Every single person, and residents had nowhere for their guests to park because a lot of us have limited parking spaces. I know down at the southern end of South Pleasant Street, they have limited parking area. So a lot of their guests use the street. A lot of their workers use the street because some people have service workers that come in and do stuff. For our place, I live in the brick apartment complex that sits directly behind Town Hall Theater. We have 2 apartment complexes behind us. We are very family-oriented. We have multiple units with families in them. And having a big, huge bus stop across the street is not something we want. It's not something we want to see. And some of the people coming off, I'm going to be completely blunt, some of the people coming off these buses are a little sketchy. Not everyone. There are a lot of great people on these buses, but some can be a little sketchy. The ones coming from Burlington or Rutland, most of the locals we all know. I'm also just, it's kind of frustrating because you guys want to change it to one way, and as I've stated, it's a problem because our road gets really congested. I know that, I don't remember who said it, but the facts said that it's not congested, but it does get congested. I do believe that, and I know there's people that will disagree, I do think the College Street would work better. Being able to drive down there, and I've seen how traffic moves. You know, I'm a Middlebury resident. I drive that daily to go up to the college. I think that that would be a plausible way to go because there's not as many residentials. There's not as many families living on the street. You know, you're also taking parking away from Town Hall Theater, which is very highly populated too. They use the, they use the streets as well. So I'm just really concerned about what this will look like for our street, how that will look on our street, because I already don't like how it looks right now by Kohl's. And it's the safety issue is huge. I'm worried about the safety for my family. I'm worried about, you know, okay, am I going to be able to get out of my driveway okay? How will that work? There's going to be this big center thing, it sounds like, in the middle of the road. Am I not going to be able to take a left turn? Because sometimes that right turn out of my driveway, there's too much traffic. And if I take the left turn to get to Shaw's, it's a boom. Am I going to have to take the whole long way around to get to there? I don't know. It's just a lot. And I feel like it just would be too much for our street, and it would be an eyesore. Our street is beautiful. Anybody that's been on our street knows it's beautiful. It's set up to be beautiful. And I think adding something extra like this is going to take away from that beauty. So I guess that's really all I can think of right now. There's so much more I'm sure I could go on about.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bruce Grohl. My wife Brenda and I own the Inn on the Green. I've got a number for you, 51 feet 9 inches. That's the distance between the front door of our inn and the curb. And I just found out today you want to move that curb back another 2 feet. So we'll be under 50 feet away from the new bus stop. Now, like every quality hospitality operation in this town, we do our best to manage the whole guest experience. Putting this bus stop that close to our inn is going to seriously impair our ability to do that. I mean, think about it. The Burlington Link bus leaves at 6:10 in the morning. You've got a diesel engine either starting or idling. You've got pneumatic doors opening. You've got backup alarms. People are less than 50 feet away with their windows. They're trying to sleep at 6 o'clock in the inn. This is really going to hurt us. And that's just the noise factor when the windows are shut. How about when the windows are open on a nice day like this? Then you have the pleasant waft of diesel fumes coming up the hill. People like to sit outside. We provide tables and chairs for them. Do people really want to sit 10, 20 feet from a bus stop because our lawn comes down? None of this works. The parking issue. We do have off-street parking for our guests. Sometimes because people park a little funny, it gets full. Well, now someone's going to come up there, and as many people have said, there's never going to be a parking spot on that street. So they're going to come into the inn and say, well, where do I park? I don't know. Schlep your luggage and find someplace. That's just a non-starter. So the combination of things. Oh, and then making it a one-way street is going to limit access to the inn, make it more difficult to get to us. So all I'm saying is you consider this, consider we're doing our best to provide a service to this community. We pay property tax, we pay room tax, and pay income tax. All those go to support the community, including Actor. And please don't impair our ability to run our business. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other comments? Yes. Oops, I'm sorry, I was.
Oh,
How are you doing? No, go ahead. I didn't see your hand come up. So.
As you all know, I've been a regular bus rider for the last 20 years. I have a lot of experience on what it's like to be just observing the traffic and everything else. And like I said earlier, I talked with 5 drivers yesterday, and the number of almost head-on collisions was a serious issue. But I was leaning toward not Seymour Street, South Pleasant Street. But the more I think about the real estate available there at where the town office used to be, that parking lot, it almost makes a lot of sense simply because there's room for all those buses in that parking lot, which is not going to be blocking the traffic heading toward campus on College Street. So that's a safety issue right there that would be alleviated by having the pull in there. But obviously, because the real estate is there. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned is the number of transfers that happen on various times of the day. I ride the bus to work in the morning, transfer. There are kids transferring from the buses in the neighborhoods to go south to Mary Hogan or the middle school or whatever. So there are transfer issues, not just people going from point A to point B. They're going to point C. And so that's a factor. But then I understand what it will do to the schedule to be a little farther out there, because where it is right now, some of the drivers in the in-town bus have been 15 minutes behind because of traffic problems. So I don't know. I personally, as a longtime rider, am leaning toward there where the town offices used to be, because the real estate is there and it's not interfering, like the gentleman just said, with his business at the Inn on the Green. Anyway, my 2 cents, my 5 cents.
Is that one of the alternative locations that you mentioning, Bill, that
We
you've
came up
looked
with
at?
4 alternative locations for that area. College Street had the most fatal safety flaws. We consider it less safe than Merchants Row, if you can believe that. So we put our heads together, and at the Friday working group meeting, we'll try and alleviate the safety concerns. We still prefer South Pleasant Street because of operational impact to operations, but we are willing to look at, again, safety being number one. We have to mitigate the safety concerns.
And were you able, in looking at that parking lot as opposed to along the street, is that what you were looking at?
We threw everything on the table.
Is that
is one of the
a
options.
safer location?
We believe that it's workable
Yeah.
for safety.
Yeah.
So, you know, we.
So the question is then, the scheduling.
Yes, so there's room for discussion. Again, we endorse South Pleasant Street, but we're willing to look at some other options to make College Street safer.
Okay. Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Maggie Supernaut. I'm one of the actor drivers. So I'm going to speak to some of these diagrams from the driver's point of view, from the driver's seat. First of all, I want to talk to the two ladies that live on South Pleasant Street. I'm going to keep my back to them so I'm facing the microphone.
Ask a question really quick. I'm so sorry, Maggie. How long does Maggie have, given that we have to end at 7? Just as long as you want?
Well, I'll cut her off if she goes too long.
There,
So.
okay.
Was I getting antsy? I'm sorry.
So I am going to turn to face these two ladies. My suggestion is to make eye contact with the driver that's approaching your driveway. We're all trained almost annually to be aware of people backing out of driveways or driving out of driveways. We need to see you and make eye contact with you to know what your intention is. So try that.
I think some of it is that it's not always the active driver, it's the people coming around the buses too.
Okay, that I can't speak for. But if it's an actor bus, make eye contact and we'll try our best.
I think I can certainly speak on our end. We're not actually, it isn't the actor drivers that we are having the issue with. It's the other people going around and the blindness to that.
Yeah. Okay.
And just that street is so heavily trafficked by children between the public school, Mary Johnson's, and a lot of families living on there. And so when there's people coming around the buses blind and a lot of children, that's right. We actually have no complaints whatsoever about the bus drivers themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're all about that.
Thank you. I'm going to tell you, though, there's a lot of neighborhoods like yours where
Maggie,
there's kids.
Can we focus to the point?
Focus on to the point. Okay. Quite honestly, we've experienced now for a few weeks the south end of South Pleasant Street. From the driver's perspective, one major flaw comes out in my mind is it's almost impossible to get the ramp down so that a person using a wheelchair, for example, can enter the bus from where we are now. The Jersey barrier situation really gives me cold chills because inevitably the first bus in line has to wait for someone else, some other bus to come in. What do? You have to pull out and go around the block. Then you're late, and then you're later, and so on. So the north end of South Pleasant Street, and the driver's point of view, from the driver's point of view, has that major drawback. Any of the other areas that have been discussed and diagrammed, again, it leaps right out at me. Do we have room to lower the elevator and have someone board? It takes 8 to 10 feet beside the bus. I haven't measured this, but it's something to consider. We have to be accessible to our riders, and any area such as the College Street diagram, I can picture that sidewalk. Is it really wide enough for our needs? I don't know without measuring everything, and I don't know if anybody has. It's not?
One bus. First bus gets
Okay.
8 feet. The other, you'd have to move the fence, but that's a workable
Okay.
solution.
Okay. Again, those are safety factors and service factors. I can't speak to the scheduling factor. There are other people in our office who are hard at work at that. The newly introduced idea of the parking lot by where the old town office existed sounds great. If having that parking lot, that would be everybody's dream, assuming the schedule can be worked out. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Maggie. Yes?
I think I can keep this brief. My name is Ian Ross. I am currently a resident of Cornwall. However, my family recently moved from Middlebury, and we spent about 4.5 years prior to Cornwall in Middlebury. First at the Woodbridge condos, and then at the South Village apartments. And during that time, we did use the Actor buses a lot to maintain having one vehicle. I looked at all your stuff that was online before coming to my thoughts, and for the temporary location, I feel that at College Street is, or College Academy Street area is your best location. Aside from the post office during construction time, I feel that that provides access to all the downtown amenities that you desire to have the buses come up towards.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Elizabeth Stabler, and I live at Eastview in Middlebury, and I confess that I rarely ride Actor, but I see it often, and my husband, Robert Ruggiero, who's here in the audience, rides the buses regularly. I am a former transit person, but to be sure, in Washington, D.C. So I don't understand why we seem to be moving to reject Seymour Street in favor of it seems, College Street. Seymour Street has a great advantage that the other two do not have. It's wide. And I wonder if you can't deal with the so-called fatal flaws of Seymour Street by jiggering some of the designs you've come up with. Could you not put all the buses on one side to deal with the problem of people crossing from one side to another? And how about redirecting some of the heavy truck traffic that goes through Main Street and down Seymour Street currently? I don't understand why that hasn't already happened to relieve the strains on the bridges and send them out, to be sure, on a longer route coming in the other end of Exchange Street. So I would like to see you continue to work on making Seymour Street work. I don't understand all the problems with the left turns and the right turns, but it seems to me that you have those problems with all three locations. That's just the way downtown is, and there are not enough traffic lights to deal with those.
Could you give me a reason why you prefer Seymour Street over, say, College Street?
Well, College Street is a narrow street also, and it currently has quite heavy traffic. Especially at certain times of day. And it's not as close to the downtown area as Seymour Street is. Seymour Street is much closer to the former Merchants Row location than the College Street one. That would be my main objection to College Street, in addition to it being a narrow street and having Weybridge coming in from the right-hand side. But most of the traffic down College Street comes from around the Circle and Main Street, and that's my response.
Okay.
I would like to see you not dismiss Seymour Street right away.
Well, I guess I'd be curious if there's anybody else who's for Seymour Street.
Just one quick comment. One side of Seymour Street operationally was the absolute worst, and it was tossed out, didn't make the short list. Two-sided option, schedule-wise, would conceptually work, but one side would kill us.
Yeah.
We put all traffic.
I don't understand.
They can't do it all on one side.
I'm familiar a little bit with the Seymour Street because we looked at it really in depth some time ago, and there's a number of people here who are very much against and opposed to Seymour Street. And I think the proximity to downtown is dependent upon how you define downtown, because if I was let out right down the street here, I would say I was downtown. I was being let out downtown, because we have a downtown park and we have downtown facilities, right, that the downtown extends through down here, whereas the location on Seymour Street, I wouldn't consider downtown. So I do think it's a matter of definition. So I'm looking for a compelling need to look at the Seymour Street location.
As I said initially, it's width. From my perspective, the width of Seymour Street gives you some options in arranging things that the other two locations don't. And I think that in the future, it offers a greater potential as a hub that connects with other with the railroad.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Could I ask just one question? We're talking about a temporary.
We're temporary, not future hub.
So is it possible, for example, that Seymour Street could become a considered permanent location sometime down the future?
What? That's a task for the future, yes.
I realize that,
Yeah.
but I mean, in other words, we're not ruling it out entirely.
Right.
We're not ruling it out for long term, but
Yeah.
I do think that there's some issues if that's going to be also part of the construction traffic.
Well, that's
Right.
the reason why I raised that question, yeah.
Sure.
Regarding the truck traffic, it's going to Exchange Street, and to ask it to go up and turn left by the Congregational Church and then come back down to access Exchange Street is not very practical. But as a rider who is transferring at 5 o'clock every night, in the wintertime, when it's dark, I would not feel safe transferring a bus on Seymour Street, because it's dark, and it's not very populated, personally.
Okay. There is something I've got as a takeaway. Dan or somebody, actually Kathleen, whoever you would task, it would be nice to know the traffic counts of the 3 streets we're considering. As we get prepared to bring this back to discussion. Is there anything else?
If you do a traffic count, could you please make sure it's during a high density time of the day? Because, and during the school year would be ideal, but we're in the summer right now. If you're doing it now, you may not end up with an accurate. Just make sure that you consider that during the school year is definitely higher than, say, during the summer.
Yeah, and actually what we need is a traffic count for the periods when the bus is running.
And won't changing to one-way affect the traffic count?
It would absolutely.
So
That's something we can talk about.
You have to project that based on it.
Yeah, that was a good point. Are there any other comments?
Sorry. So my uncle who lives on the street, he has 2 staff on a day, so we have extra staffing needs. And having worked at the counseling service for 28 years, I know lots of clients live on that street, on South Pleasant Street, all of whom at some point or other have staff that come in. So it really isn't just the population, but the fact that the population on that street has, frankly, quite a lot of folks have staffing that comes in and out during the day. So losing that street parking has been really, really challenging for workers who are seeing clients that live on that street. Not just my own personal case, but I happen to know from my previous job that there are a lot of folks on that street that have staff that come to their homes. So, you know, I know we've been like sneaking over parking at the law offices, hoping we kind of don't get caught. So just, it isn't just the population who lives on the street in terms of their own residential parking, but the fact that so many during the day when buses are running are also having staff that have to park there.
We've had that issue on the northern end as well. I have other tenants in my building who have people come to work with them who have mental health needs, who have medical needs. Another thing to consider is I have elderly neighbors who have, I would say at least once a month, we have the ambulance there, we've had the fire department there. We've had a lot of, well, we don't have as much police anymore that some of our neighbors have moved out, but, you know, it's a lot to consider, especially for South Pleasant Street. And there's a lot more residents on South Pleasant Street than College Street. And I like the idea of the parking lot. I just want to put that in there. That parking lot would be a perfect spot for the buses. Perfect.
Okay, so I'm going to wind this down. Has anybody got any one last comment they need to make? And if not, is there any questions from?
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
When we are ready to make a decision, are we going to see a final presentation? Or?
We need to, they have some more working group
There's one thing
things to consider, so I'm not sure that we will absolutely make a decision at the next meeting, because there's been some input here, and now there's some...
It comes back to infrastructure, too.
Yeah, so...
Okay, so
we
one thing I just found challenging tonight was that the presentation didn't include actors' pros and... Like, I would have liked to have seen something that was a little more formal in that everybody's pros and cons in a pros and cons list.
Yep.
I felt like, so this is staff's pros and cons, but then we kind of had to get actors' stuff after the fact. If we're going to get a final presentation, I would like it all. If you're going to come back and present this as your final choice, I would like everybody's pros and cons listed together and you not having to... Would that be okay to request?
Yeah, I think I can give them a way to present it. So you may have, so we have two options for sure, and I think at least a third maybe. I'll give you a matrix and a way to lay it out. It would be really nice if you could brief it in a matrix format, which would have staff's considerations and actors' considerations, and then an overall recommendation of the working group based upon maybe a weighted average or something. So we need to tidy that up a little bit. I'm not sure we're going to make a decision at our next meeting because there's a number of outstanding questions, and there's going to be a new consideration for us, at least one, it sounds like, for us to look at.
I'd like you to add another category. I mean, it seems to me, in addition to safety, there's something like quality of life of residents impact. I mean, just listening to some of the testimony on South Pleasant Street, it seems to me, raises that issue more than the other two places. There are people living there, and this is going to have an impact on their quality of life. And it seems to me the well-being of residents is one of our main concerns as a governmental body.
I guess on from actors' perspective, we're happy to work with staff to put together a matrix of pluses and minuses, and certainly.
But I'd like to see that in it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was looking to see if our old performance matrix had.
The LPM team has a matrix that takes into consideration all of those categories.
Yeah, I thought we had a matrix, so you know, if we had something like that, would be really helpful.
What I liked about that one is that it showed exactly how much extra time was added on by moving it to the different places, and I found that really helpful to know. Instead of guessing about it, it was right there. So
I'm happy to put that matrix together. For what it's worth, these were the comments that came up in the working group. These are new comments.
I don't know.
I think that you've articulated them a lot better than in the working group. So let's, in the future, if you've got things written out like that, you know, Adam will give them to me, and we'll make sure that they're incorporated at the same time. I was a little surprised tonight too, so we'll try to get together sooner and have a more well-balanced approach next time, I hope.
So respectfully, Jen, I thought we articulated those concerns pretty well in the working group, and we had a contentious working group. I don't think there's any, but we will absolutely work with you to give them to you, and get them in a matrix form so everyone can understand them.
So there's a working group meeting on Friday, and then we've got another infrastructure committee meeting on Thursday. If it feels after the infrastructure committee meeting like we need another working group meeting, let's do that before we come back to the select board.
So will Actor be available for the infrastructure committee meeting on Thursday?
Absolutely, someone will be there representing.
Great, thank you.
Because I felt that piece was missing last time, so.
Okay.
Thank you for the.
All right, I think we still have quite a bit of work to do, so I'm going to close this out. So you had a question?
Oh, no, I was just curious to know the fire chief and police chief's opinion
I
about
know,
the
I've
safety.
been looking at them all night too,
Yeah.
because I wanted to hear
So
from
we
them.
want to know the opinion of the police chief and the fire chief about the safety of these locations.
Quickly.
You gotta run, buddy,
Right now, I'm going as
run.
fast as I can.
No, I meant
Squeezing,
the time.
squeezing a transfer station and a travel line is a bad idea. Taking away South Pleasant Street is a bad idea. I will give you pictures of when we had the train accident, is what we use South Pleasant Street for. We're going to lose a major artery right off a rotary. It's just, that's the only flat area where we can muster emergency equipment. When we talk about service and scheduling, we have an accident there, like we did a pedestrian accident last year. Their service and schedule goes out the window because we take the street, and away goes the bus station. The best idea is get the transfer station off of the road, someplace where the buses can safely muster and park, and we don't have conflicts, and we don't have it right in a busy travel area where it is now. I mean, that's as simple as I can put it. When I look at that and see the Jersey barriers in the middle of a travel lane, and I see us that close to a busy intersection, my skin crawls. This is not a good idea. And as far as safety and service, they go out the window the minute we have an event. And it will happen because we have them quite regularly in that area. That's about as concise as I can be, folks.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay. Could you also add your comment about the width of the travel lane on South Pleasant? I did not mention that.
So the north end of South Pleasant shows a travel lane of 10'5". The new ladder truck comes in at 10'6". So that would make a pinch point that would actually block that road as far as fire apparatus. It also, Jersey barrier sets us farther away. I'm pretty confident we would not be able to reach the inn on the green with a ladder truck if we had to do a second-story evacuation out of that property. We would need to be right on the edge of the curb there. So there's some life safety issues with the North Pleasant Street. The Seymour Street issue is a number of years ago, we used to park and then race across the street into the fire station before we revamped that, and we had 2 firefighters get hit. I believe that's the same issue would happen with a rider. A rider is just going to be scurrying to get from one bus to another, not taking into consideration the 4 dozen tractor trailers and the other agricultural equipment that go up and down that street, and somebody will be hit there as well. It's a heavily traveled street, and it does back up. Thank you.
The other thing would be really nice to look at is if you could really take a strong look at what that would do to the service aspect, and if you can make the scheduling work down here off from College Street.
We're doing our best to,
Yeah.
time constraints to take and guess as to how things are going. So we've been doing some tests and trials and things. So we'll do our best to fill out the matrix that you have as accurately as we can.
Okay. You got Mary working hard on that?
Something to keep in mind is if we move completely to a new location, it probably will disrupt the whole system. So we can do some time trials to say it's going to be 10 minutes longer on this leg of the trip. But in reality, if we move to College Street, we'll be redoing our whole schedule, which is going to be very time consuming.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And thanks for working with us. We'll figure out what's best for the town.
He's, that's Bill Cunningham.
7:15, I'm sorry for the delay out there. We just took a lot of public comment on an actor relocation site, and there was a lot of real good points that were made, and I think we're I think we're starting to zero in on what seems to be appropriate options for the town to consider. Next is approval of the minutes of our June 13th regular Select Board meeting.
So moved.
A second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any changes, amendments, additions?
Not for me.
Anything.
Nothing. All in favor of the minutes as drafted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And one abstention. So we have 5-4, one abstention, one absent. Citizen comments. Is anyone here for something that's not on the agenda? Okay, easy enough. Moving forward.
Back on schedule almost.
Didn't take long to get back on schedule. Appointment to Addison County Regional Planning Commission's Transportation Advisory Committee, and Betty Nuovo expressed interest in seeking a one-year appointment as our Middlebury representative to the Regional Planning Commission Transportation Advisory Committee. And I think everybody saw her email. It's a position that there's going to be a lot going on, and a position that I think she'd do really well for us at. So with that, pleasure of the board.
I'll move that we nominate Betty.
I'll second.
To a one-year term as Middlebury's
One-year term
representative?
as the representative on the Transportation
Okay.
Advisory Committee.
Are there any comments?
I should recuse myself.
You should probably recuse yourself, Mr. Noble. So, with that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So, one abstention. And then we probably should have an alternate, and Kathleen has volunteered to carry that mantle.
Have you been the alternate?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I go about 6 times a year.
So I'll make the motion to appoint Kathleen to the one-year term as Middlebury's alternate to the Addison County Regional Planning Commission's Transportation Advisory Committee.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
He's back in.
All right. All in favor?
I can vote.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Jen? Oh, actually, 6A was letter. Let's, Jim, we have a drafted letter.
Yes, this was a late ad. Thank you for adding it to the agenda. Just a quick note on the project. We're winding down this first phase, and Champlain Construction is out working tonight to tie in the Main Street water line. That's the last piece of work that needs to be done, so by the end of the week, they should be out of town here until later in July. The letter that you have in front of you is asking for the town's concurrence with a decision that the V-Trans State Historic Preservation Officers made. Let me, since that's a late arrival, just walk you quickly through what you're being asked to do here. Okay? The first phase of our rail and bridge project involves construction of a new drainage system for the rail corridor. That system calls for installation of an outfall pipe in Riverfront Park at the far end of it, on town-owned land, but at the far end of it behind the National Bank of Middlebury. And it also calls for installation of a catch basin and other aspects of the drainage system that are in the railroad right-of-way, but directly adjoining Triangle Park. So Triangle Park and Riverfront Park are the two reasons that we're here to talk about those today. So to complete the work, a small section of Riverfront Park will be temporarily closed to the public during construction. This is that ledge that kind of runs out toward where the outfall pipe will be. And a small section of the Village Green will also be closed, and that's primarily Triangle Park to allow installation of that part of the drainage system there. But the majority of Riverfront Park, majority of Village Green will remain open throughout the construction project, and both areas will be restored to their pre-construction condition. So why are we here and we're talking about this letter? Because recreation areas like Riverfront Park and the Village Green are among the resources that are protected under Section 4F of the 1966 Department of Transportation Act. So when we hear Section 4F, it's referring to that section of the DOT Act that protects recreation areas and other public areas. So the letter you have is from the VTrans Historic Preservation Officer asking the town to concur with its determination that a temporary closure of a small portion of Riverfront Park and a small portion of the Village Green, namely Triangle Park area, will have a minimal impact on the public's ability to use these two parks, because they're fairly small sections of them that will be closed. And she's asking the town then to concur with the de minimis recommendation that VTrans is making to Federal Highway Administration. And this is all part of the protocol of Section 4F. De minimis meaning, of course, just a kind of a minimal impact on the public's use of these areas. VTrans is also requesting a permanent easement from the town in order to maintain the outfall pipe, and the drainage facilities are on Triangle Park. So the town owns Triangle Park. The town's in a position to grant a permanent easement there. That's just for maintenance access. The town does not own Riverfront Park, but the town has an easement to use Riverfront Park as a public park and to maintain it and so forth. And so the state feels that the town is the entity with the jurisdiction because it has this jurisdiction over the public park use, to sign off on both the temporary use of Riverfront Park and the granting of a permanent easement that would allow maintenance of the outfall pipe if it's needed. So by signing the letter, you're agreeing with VTrans's decision and recommendation to the FHA, and you are also agreeing to grant VTrans the permanent easements it's seeking. Benj Putnam has reviewed the letter from a legal perspective and signed off on it, and so the letters come to you to sign and concur with the state's determination here. I hope that's a logical review of what you're being asked to do.
And for the boards, this is an updated version of one that we signed
May 23rd.
May
Correct.
23rd.
Yep.
So, are there any questions of Jim?
I do. So when would it start, this period, do you think?
This period for Riverfront Park would start, well, for both of the areas, would start in spring of next year.
Spring of next year,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yep. Heather?
Can you tell me where the part is where we're granting the easements?
Yeah.
One of them I just read.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Under Riverfront Park, number 2.
Okay.
Second paragraph, second sentence, a permanent easement will remain roughly in the footprint.
Right.
That one is there.
No.
It's just talking about an easement and granting it are two different things. This grants the easement at the same time?
That's my understanding of the letter, yeah.
Okay.
It's a request.
That the board would support granting an easement. An easement is a formal document that would have to go through a process.
That's different, yeah.
So I should have been clear.
I was like,
Yeah.
I don't think so, but okay. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions of Jim? Ross?
That's
Oh,
all
did
right.
you have a question?
Well, I just have a minor concern. I mean, we signed it before. I didn't have email today, so I'm just looking at this now. Just feeling like I haven't had enough time to compare them, but I know I signed it before, so I would be okay with it if Jim would tell me there weren't, and I guess I'm not really sure what the major changes are. other
Sure.
than-
I can tell you what the major change from before is that before they were going to leave a pathway on that ledge. They were going to leave a maintenance road basically on that ledge that runs out to the outfall pipe, and now they decided not to do that. They want to have it revert to pre-construction condition. So they've done away with leaving a kind of more permanent footprint there to go out to the outfall pipe.
Okay.
So I think from the town's point of view, it's a positive step because it will restore the park to precisely what it was beforehand.
And that's the major change between them? Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, I just,
Sure,
not as
no.
prepared on this as I would have liked to have been, and just one of those days.
Well, it arrived later. Yep.
Ross?
Yeah, Ross Conrad, Middlebury. It's my understanding that the town has a lot of various pipes and things buried in the ground on their property. Whenever projects are conducted, those pipes can cause a lot of challenges. We're trying to figure out which ones are active, which ones are abandoned, they're in the way. And so I'm wondering if the town could, in the granting of this easement, have a requirement that at some point, should this outflow pipe ever be not needed and abandoned, that it get removed by the state, so that we just, not just another abandoned pipe in the ground that we're constantly like tripping over whenever we're doing a project. And Dan's here, and he could probably talk to it.
Yeah, this is a permanent drainage pipe we're talking about. It's not a small, this is that, I don't know if you know the pipe we're talking about then, Ross.
It's a drainage pipe, right, but I know there's
Yeah.
a lot of pipes, like water pipes that are broken.
Yeah, no, this is quite a bit different. This is a very large drainage pipe that will not be abandoned. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is,
That was a good point.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, ready.
okay, so pleasure of the board. I think we're looking for support. It would be, if we were in support of this, would be a motion just to sign
You were
it.
taking an in-breath. I thought you were going to.
No,
Oh,
not you. Go ahead.
So I'd like to make a motion to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to.
Okay, actually, I have it
Oh, is
prepared
it-
for the
is it-
board signature.
We all
Oh,
sign
it changed. Okay, sorry. See? So make a motion that we signed the letter, see, I don't know what to call it, the proposed section 4F finding Middlebury Bridge and Rail Project letter?
Dated.
Period.
Period.
Dated June 27th,
June 20, what did I just say?
2017.
I don't even know what month it is.
Period.
So that would be to replace our May 23rd, 2017 letter, which we would retract.
Yes.
Sure.
Perhaps. Okay. All in favor? Aye. As opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Remind us what day they get started on
July 20th.
July 20th?
Lions Club auction is July 19th. The next day, they will mobilize, and I'll be sharing with you shortly, a revision, well, the plan to make sure that we're all up to speed on what that next section of the phase looks like. But,
So right after the Lions auction.
right. Yep. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Jen, now, it was a head fake I was just working on. So we're going to be talking about Vermont Sales Tax Reallocation Program.
Yeah, so this is a fun opportunity that comes up every year. So for construction projects that happen in the designated downtown, there's a competitive program. So it's not really a grant application, it's more of an application to a competitive program. We're competing against other towns with construction projects in their downtowns. You can take all of the sales tax generated on construction materials in excess of $200,000 and get them reallocated back to the town for the purpose of constructing a municipal project that benefits both the town and that business. So it's sort of like TIF light, I was thinking as I was writing this application. The project I thought that might be good for this is something we've kind of talked about with the co-op since last year when they were going through DRB proceedings, was seeing how much we could take in sales tax from that project and reallocate it back to the town. So it looks like there'll be about $55,000 that we could get from that project to reallocate back to our town for doing a municipal project. Now, I don't really know if this is big enough to be competitive with whatever other towns are applying, but we figured why not? We're right down to the deadline here by the time everybody's kind of gotten it together, but I went out on the site and met with Glenn Lauer and Asher Nelson from VIA, and we came up with a couple neat ideas. We thought that it would be good to improve the crosswalk a little bit that goes from the co-op over toward the Shaw's parking lot. And maybe we'll just improve that with some paint or maybe even some printing or different texture in that crosswalk. On the Shaw's side, there's enough room in the public right-of-way to fit 2 benches and maybe a little bit of landscaping. And then on the co-op side, something the co-op was really excited about was adding some sort of covered area. Initially, they thought it would be in the first 2 parking spaces, but it might be a little bit more toward the existing seating area with the picnic tables. This is something that was brought up during their public process that they had with their membership, and it got dropped from their budget because they just couldn't afford it. So this is an opportunity for us to help them out and put this back in their budget. And so with that covered area, they could have covered bike parking, they could have outdoor events, they could bring in vendors like the goat cheese guy or the person making cosmetics, and I don't know, just have like cool events, you know, and I think it would be a nice thing for the community and the co-op. So any opportunity to help out a local business in this way, why not try, I figure. Any other?
Actually sounded pretty exciting. I never even heard of this program.
Yeah.
But, do they cap it on like so many dollars that can be redistributed? So maybe as a smaller project, it might just squeeze in.
Maybe. Right, exactly. I think they have a pot of $2 million to work from or something like that, but they have to share it between this and then the tax credit program that we've heard about in downtowns. So, yeah.
Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So it's supposed to be infrastructure, but this covered space sounds like it fits more for the co-op than really like a town you know what I mean? Like
they call it a municipal project. They don't really mention infrastructure, but it's a municipal project, which is the moniker they give it, and it can be in the public right of way or on private property.
Okay.
My question is just from our retreat, we were talking about adding projects and staff time and things like that. Is this something that can fit into, is it staff that and would have to oversee the bids and all that kind of stuff in the planning? So I just want to make sure from Kathleen's standpoint that staff can take that on and there's a place in the priority list for that, because that's what we're supposed to be asking before we decide.
Jen, do you think this is something you can oversee?
And I don't do anything without asking Kathleen first. So
no, but we're supposed to be training ourselves to do that as well.
Yes, I think I can take this on with my workload.
Okay.
I got to walk with Jen at Local Motion only last week, and we looked at that intersection, and this would be exciting, you know, and I think with the covered area for bike parking, that would be a model that we could really experiment with and see how that flies. And I think it would really enhance that whole widely used region. So I think it would be great.
So, pleasure of the board. It sounds like the board's moving in favor of this.
I'll move that we authorize our, is it our town manager or Jen to apply for the grant, to submit for the tax sales, the Vermont Sales Tax Reallocation Program.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
And I'll move to approve the select board letter of support for the application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
Do you need other letters of support? Or that should do it?
Yeah, I'll have a letter of intent that the co-op signs. But yeah, it'd be great to get other letters of support if you think we can get them by the end of the week. It took a long time to get final construction numbers because you need to have that construction number to know what your pot of money is.
Right. Okay, and now creating a conservation commission.
Yeah, so this is something we're excited about. I guess it warrants mentioning that when I worked in Williston before I was here, I was the staff planner that was dedicated to their conservation commission. And Williston has a really active conservation commission. They do a lot of different things. And before that, I helped the conservation commission in Jericho. And so since I've been here, I've kind of missed having that body to do natural resource inventories and like some of the actual work that generates the data that the Planning Commission needs to use for their regulations. So the Planning Commission has just completed updating the town plan, and you'll start to see that in public hearings over the summer. And as I'm updating the town plan, there's a lot of opportunities for us to create things in the town plan or to create better regulations to protect natural resources, but you can't protect it if you don't know where it is. There's inventory and mapping to be done. There is mapping of scenic resources to be done, because that relates to the update that we need to do for the energy plan next year. I'd really like to know where the wildlife crossings are. I'd like there to be a group that could start to think about where trails go, and I know that there's a possibility for that to overlap with MALT, but I've talked to MALT for a year now about like what they would do, what they wouldn't do. They're working on some of their strategic planning now, so that would be a lighter task that we would wait until MALT figured out where they were at. But I could go on, and you've got the memo in front of you. There's at least 3 to 5 years of tasks already sort of backlogged that I'd love to get busy with this group on. And so as I thought about this group, I was thinking about how this Conservation Commission is different from, say, the Planning Commission. The Conservation Commission would need to be a real working group. So I would be very interested in having people on. I'd be interested in having a small group to begin with, 5 members instead of 7 or 9. Probably no alternates, because they're not really making decisions, but what they're doing is coming in and working hard on different tasks. So I would be their staffer, and I would work with them on the different tasks. We would have a small budget that's in the planning department budget right now, which we can use as seed money to start hiring a consultant to do mapping of vernal pools or class 3 wetlands to get our town plan maps up to date and get our regulations up to date. So when I think about the people that would be most effective on the Conservation Commission, certainly people who understand and walk and on the trails and spend time in the woods, but also people, if possible, that have backgrounds in ecology and natural sciences and things like that. But the state statute says that the people on the Conservation Commission need to be residents of the town. So for what it's worth, if this makes you feel any more comfortable, it made me feel good. I did some recruiting. So like over the last year and a half, I need to recontact these people, but I did some recruiting, and over the last year and a half, I have 5 people who are really interested in being on the Conservation Commission already. And several of them, there's a lot of professors, but the professors who are residents. And I thought about, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? I think it's a good thing from the perspective that these are residents who haven't had something inspiring enough to get them involved in town process yet. So I don't know. I think it's a really cool opportunity to sort of cull a different part of the population, and get people excited around these things. So do you have any questions about how I was thinking about the Conservation Commission maybe working, or?
Questions?
I think I'm clear. I'm sorry, Heather, did you?
No. I just have concerns about additional committees and volunteer time, but that's, pretty standard, so. Not that that takes anything away from it being exciting or that the work doesn't need to be done. I'm just think about the number of committees we have and the number of meetings we have, and just conscious of that, that's all.
It could be that this is striking a pulse for some people, though. And I know that some committees get dormant and then others rise and get active. And some towns have a conservation commission or committee that functions as their energy committee, so it's both, and so sometimes you might see that, and you can see if there's that kind of migration over time. But if there is evident interest, and you say that there is, why not?
Right, I'm not opposed to it. I just want to. I just feel compelled to be conscious of the number of committees and time and volunteer hours that we're asking. That's all.
Kind of sort of an interesting point related to that. Is that okay? Is that is that I have the background to be able to do this. I was an environmental scientist before I became a planner, so I have the background to do all these inventories and things, but there's such limited time. I thought, wouldn't a working group volunteer committee that I'm staffing be able to help me get my work done twice as fast? And, you know, wouldn't maybe some of them even be able to access resources from students at the college? And we already have some people with GIS background that have ideas about how to put together GIS projects around it and things like that. So maybe in the end, it would help alleviate some staff time.
Yeah, and I'm more concerned about volunteer time. But I'm not opposed to it. I just want to voice and be conscious of it. That's all. That's always good.
Well, I think, Laura mentioned, to a certain extent, the Energy Committee is sort of a conservation committee, but in a narrower sense, and I'm just thinking, I'm in favor of this, but I also think that maybe we ought to do it in a way that we can think about possible other reorganizations. I mean, with the Planning Commission, the Energy Committee, and
Tree, we have a tree committee.
Conservation. It seems to me these are all focusing on things that they tend to converge, and it may very well be in a year we might want to sort of refigure how we're going to put all these things together. So as a kind of experiment, maybe try it. But I'm wondering whether you need, 3 people might be enough to.
Well, we could see what kind of interest we get too.
Yeah.
And make a decision.
Yeah.
If we only got 3 people interested, then that would.
Well, Jen said that she
We
has
have 5, right?
Yep. And the state law allows you not less than 3 or more than 9. So it could be 3. But I do have 5 interested persons, unless they're not interested any longer.
That's fine.
Maybe it is 3 in the end.
I'm not saying that you should exclude the other 2 if you have 5 ready to do this.
We have to advertise though and get a formal.
Right.
So.
Right. See what it turns out.
One interesting thing about committees too is that there's sort of like a big 4 of committees that are defined under state statute, and that's the DRB, the Planning Commission, and then the advisory committees that they allow you, the Design Advisory Committee and the Conservation Commission. And so what they are and what they do is really specifically defined by state statute, and they have to stay within those rules, which is why the planner usually ends up staffing those 4 committees. And so they are distinct from like the Energy Committee, for instance, or the Tree Committee. So that's worth thinking about as you're thinking too.
Well, does it make sense for the Tree Committee to come under this because of its related work? Or no, it's different tasks?
Given the 5-year plan of priority projects, I think that Tree Committee members might be frustrated. Something I have thought about though is because the Conservation Commission is defined really well under state statute, there could be a possibility in this town that there's enough work and interest about different projects to form an ad hoc Conservation Commission. So if there were still people that were interested in conservation issues that didn't really fall into our plan of what we need to get done for the Planning Commission, they could have an ad hoc committee that was part of the ad hoc Tree Committee. Because ad hoc committees, of course, aren't town committees. They could meet in someone's basement or living room or something like that. So I wonder if the Tree Committee might want to expand their scope, if anything. But to bring the Tree Committee into this committee, I think they would be frustrated because there's not a lot of tree things on this list yet.
You're really looking more broad-based to start.
I'm thinking about those town plan maps and our regulations. And I'm real scared when we get a DRB hearing application and I say, there's a wetland there, but it hasn't been mapped in the last 5 years. Wetlands move. And so I just think and then looking forward to the energy section of the town plan, you know, the Planning Commission isn't at a place where they can say, these are our sacred views. And that was something even Amy Sheldon asked us about, you know, a year ago. And I was like, that's a really good question. We don't have those in our town plan. So it's interesting. One of the people who want to be on the committee is a professor at the college, and her students actually performed a viewshed analysis last year. And we're thinking of borrowing that methodology, getting new input from Select Board, Planning Commission, like that, to produce the same sort of GIS map with new input. So, lots to be done.
Pleasure of the board.
So I'll make a motion to approve the creation of a Middlebury Conservation Commission and authorize staff to begin advertising for interested candidates.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Good
If
luck.
I-
Keep us in the loop how much interest you get. And
Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Vermont Bike and Pedestrian Grant Program.
So,
I was like, where's she going? I'm like, wow, she's
I was just so
going
excited
for that
about
one.
the conservation person. I lost my mind.
At your last meeting, we discussed a requirement that Malt install a railroad crossing near the Boathouse Bridge. And so the first grant application I'm going to ask you about tonight is for a small-scale project to do exactly that. There's up to $50,000 that you can, $40,000 that you can apply through for this grant opportunity. The project we've been discussing is $38,000, and it's a 50% match. So that would get us a good portion of the way there, and as you may recall, we're thinking of partnering with the college, Malt, the town, and VAST if they are willing to come up with that 50% share. Seems to be a good fit, and I'd like your authorization to apply for this grant fund.
I'll move that we authorize the submission of the grant you just described.
Small-scale grant.
Small-scale grant for funding the installation of the safety gates at the Malt Railroad crossing.
Do we have a second?
Oh, sorry.
Long
Totally
meeting, I know,
zoning out.
I know. Okay, so.
Forehead's awake.
Forehead was on it. Questions? Not? All in favor? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
And I'll also move that we commit the town to the share of the required 50% local match, with the amount to be determined as you described between the three parties, Middlebury College, Malt, and VAST,
I'll second that.
Four parties, right?
and the town.
And just for those of us who are number of people, 19 divided by 4 is 4750.
Okay.
I want to know how much we have to come up with.
I love your budgeting.
Thank you, Heather.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
So, last week, Locomotion was down, and they did take a look at various different pedestrian crossings and ways, and brought this next project forward. I realized that we had been working hard on Exchange Street to get funding for that, but do keep in mind there's been an identified need for this, and Exchange Street was not successful our last 3 rounds, so we're thinking that they being the state, in this grant program in particular, may be looking for us to make some progress on Exchange Street before coming back to them for another application. And we are moving through the Exchange Street conceptual plan, now in right-of-way for that, so we're looking good for construction next year. So I think that we'll be in a better position next year to apply for this. Talked to Susan earlier today, concerned that this Court Street sidewalk project had not gone through the infrastructure committee before coming to the select board. So I talked to Jennifer about bringing it to the infrastructure committee on July 6th. But do note that these grant applications are due July 14th, and so that's going to be a heavy lift. And since Jennifer is here, could she tell you a little bit about the project more than I have?
So, boy, I'm tempted to tell them about Locomotion, but I know that you're really over time now, so we should do an update about that at some point.
Okay.
But Locomotion is doing a technical assistance project with us, providing some free engineering work to the town of Middlebury over the summer. This came along sort of at the last minute. They were looking for another town to add to their list, and I said, let's go for it. So they were here on the 21st and 22nd. We looked at several different dangerous intersections. Creek Road had risen to the top of the list of dangerous intersections in our working group meeting. So they looked at Creek Road, and you'll be able to see some neat concept drawings that they're creating at Creek Road. But as they were out there and thinking about bike ped circulation in that area, they realized it's because the sidewalk ends at Creek Road and then picks up again not until Middle Road that maybe some people are crossing at Creek Road. And the Middle Road intersection has a crosswalk that I think most people think is much safer than the Creek Road crosswalk. So we thought if we just completed that section of sidewalk, it might encourage pedestrians to go to a safer location. And they're not just pedestrians, they're school children, you know, going from the elementary school to the middle school, crossing between residential neighborhoods. There's so much housing and so many schools and activities in that area. I think it makes for a very strong grant application. And they didn't even have enough grants last year, apparently, to fund it. They didn't have enough grant applications to give away all their money last year for sidewalks. So maybe this is a good opportunity. So apologize that it's last minute.
No,
Just
it's
sorta
okay.
Came along.
I think for me it was, I think it's a great project, but it has to sort of fit into, we're trying so hard to have a master list of different projects and plan for budgeting, so it just needs to fit in there so that we know that we have the money for it. If the grant comes through, we need to have money for it, and it needs to sort of have a priority. And I still feel a little guilty about having orphaned the Exchange Street sidewalk from capital improvements budgeting. So I'm trying to make sure that I don't orphan anything else, that everything's included and has a place and a priority. So.
So can I talk?
Yeah.
So I want poor Dan. Do you know what I'm going to say? You do know what I'm going to say. I want a list of sidewalk priorities, and I want to meet those sidewalk priorities, and I really don't want to consider any more new projects. Although in this case, I would say that I do believe it was in the town plan as something that's been identified. But if I had a list of sidewalk priorities right now, you know, would I move this to the, I don't know, or would I do something different? So poor Dan, every time I see him, I say I want this list of sidewalk priorities. The other concern that I have, if money wasn't an issue, I'd have no problem supporting this. But when you look at our draft for the capital improvement budget for last year, we've already specified for fiscal year 18-19 43.9 matching for Exchange Street. We tried to bump up, we've been trying to bump up our existing sidewalk maintenance budget by $5,000 each year, but we're still not keeping up. Where are we going to put this other $20,000?
It's a struggle.
We're already looking at a draft capital improvement budget that's $108,900 above this year, and that doesn't add another $20,000 in. So I not that I don't want to do this project, but I'm concerned about the money and where it's going to come from and what's going to get put on the back burner to do this. Not that this is not a priority, not that it doesn't need to be done, but I want to talk about money and how I know it's only $20,000, but where's it going to come from?
The reality is that in order to do this, there's going to be things that have been on that priority list that will get moved down, and that's hard. So as much as I'm excited about something, I feel bad about moving something down that has worked its way up. So it's hard.
So having come from like a couple different towns where I write grants and deal with budgeting issues and things like that, I can say that like sometimes you have a list and you're trying to work through your list, but other times things happen like free concept plans that sort of might change your prioritization. It makes it so tricky. I can really feel for you on that one.
Yep.
So free technical assistance to prepare concept plans that could make you grant ready to get this sidewalk 80% funded might be pretty alluring.
Yeah.
I don't deny that at all, but what would be great is if when you get notice that we have that potential, can we work with the infrastructure committee and say, where would you use that? Where would you, and then it would be easier to support this stuff because there's been some communication with us. To read that this was a priority in the notes when we hadn't even seen it or talked about it was, you know, and we've talked about a lot, so.
Our working group was geared around talking to bike ped people and trying to figure out, you know, where problematic intersections were from that perspective. But I will say that Chris Robbins was represented on our group from the start because of her familiarity with sidewalks and having done the sidewalk mapping.
But she wasn't designated, and she never mentioned it for us. So, I mean, that's...
We would say that in the planning
it would
commission,
be,
too.
This is the perfect thing for you to come and talk with us and try and work, like, for capital budgeting and all that kind of stuff. And that's
In a perfect world, you have an opportunity like this comes up and you can say, you know, what would you use that money for from an infrastructure perspective, and what would you use that money for from a bike ped, and what would you use it from a public safety, you know, and let's see where we all meet and choose the project from that, if we can. That's would be a request. In a perfect world, and we don't live in a perfect world, so.
Question for Jen. Jen, what's the cycle, the grant cycle for this one? Do they
annual?
No, when do they expect construction next year?
Thanks, Dan. Why don't you show up and quiz me? No, I think you got 2 years to complete it, probably something along those lines.
Just because this is state right away, and you know, the state will nothing happens very quickly. So
I'm sure it's not the first state right away project this
Yeah.
this program is funded. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're thinking construction in 2 years? That's much faster than any of the other grants we've gotten, Dan.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was like our other highway grants, they have a certain time you have to spend the money. So I didn't know.
You have to design it first too.
Right.
So they're building in design in the schedule, and then, you know, right-of-way procurement and all that, and then you're constructing. So I don't know.
So
I don't even have the budget from the engineer yet. It's all just very last minute. And
so is there room to put that match in like 19 and 20 in the budget, and are we?
That's what I'm thinking too.
That's, I just
And
want
what
to have that
you've done
conversation as part
on other grants like this, like Exchange Street, you phase that over several years. Because you knew you were going to be in design 1 year, right of way, and then construction. So.
That's what I'm thinking, based upon my experience with the sidewalks that we've received grants on. We're 3 before we even think of starting.
Right.
So you're really looking at 4 to 5 year budgeting process.
Right. And that's what I wanted to know, and how it was going to fit in, and how it's going to work, and
that's what I'm saying. Once we know how it fits in, then we can plan for that. So, yep.
So there's a way to budget to do it, get it.
Right. So it might not bump anything off the list for a couple of years.
Yeah, so like I don't see right now that there's room to add this in next year.
No.
Or so, but if we can bump it out a couple years, then that seems like it would work.
So then you're going to go to the infrastructure committee. And I think the takeaway is we would like to maybe work with the infrastructure committee first in the future when something like this comes up, to see what's on in the bike ped community, get everybody together to prioritize. But it sounds like a good project, and maybe I wouldn't be discouraged. I think we're just trying to figure through our processes of how we can link things a little bit better. But
I would actually be okay with applying for it, because we don't have to take it if we get it. If we wanted to support applying for it tonight, and then you come and talk with us and we work out all the other things, as long as in the future we're in the front end of that.
Or I could skip it in the future. You know, I really put myself out there trying to like throw us at you last minute. I didn't, you know.
But I'm okay with authorizing.
I'm okay
signing
with
up
the
for it.
project as long as we understand how we're going to budget it in, and where the money's going to come from, and how it's all going to work. I don't have anything against the project, so.
if you're okay with that, then maybe we can action it so it doesn't have to come back to us, and the infrastructure
That's what I'm
committee
thinking.
can
We can work out
prioritize
our
in their
stuff,
budget.
and you guys don't have to worry about it for a while.
Why don't we do that?
So I'll make the motion to authorize the submission of a 2017 bike ped bicycle pedestrian program grant application to seek funding for a project to design and construct 900 feet of sidewalk on Court Street between Creek Road and Middle Road, and commit the town to the required 20% local match on total cost.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay.
And I'll make the motion to approve the Select Board letter of support for the project.
I second.
And seconded by Farhad. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Thank you, Jen.
Welcome.
Creek Road Erosion Stability Study Report.
So, Infrastructure Committee met, was that Thursday? Feels like forever ago. Okay, and so in your packet, we have the executive summary from that. I can do a brief thing that in the spring of 2015, the Select Board closed Creek Road due to significant road erosion along the banks of Otter Creek. And so the gates were installed to allow access to farmers, and the board began to look, the board asked us to look at alternatives to reopening the road without relying on the traditional expensive repairs that we've done in the past. So we hired Pathways Consulting, and they put together the Creek Road Erosion Stability Study to look at the natural flooding and bank erosion along the creek, explore strategies for stabilizing the banks, and explored lower cost alternatives for reopening the road, and with cost estimates to go along with them. And so we looked at a bunch of different alternatives and put the top 4 comparisons. Well, there was the top 3 plus the number 4 is implementing the minimum maintenance measures that we've already done. And what they came up with, their recommendation was, the number 1 was shifting 8,320 feet of existing creek road to the east within or near existing right-of-way to restore the 25-foot riparian buffer between Creek Road and Otter Creek. This was the one that was sustainable for the future, solved the problems in a different way, and sort of restored that buffer along the river that would long-term keep us from having to keep fixing the road with, what do you call it, keying in stones all along the way and making a big mess. So the Infrastructure Committee met with members of the community. I think, I hate to speak for all of them, there was a lot of interest in reopening the road, and everyone seemed to be very conscientious of the price tag that was involved. Surprisingly, everything was expensive. There's no cheap way to fix this road and keep it open. So what the committee did in the end, after a lot of debate and a lot of motions and remotions, we recommended to fix this section of Creek Road that needs to be fixed and open as soon as possible, as soon as we can afford it, but within the methods outlined by the study. So, and meanwhile, we can evaluate how this method holds up while we're in the process of exploring potentially phasing this. So not doing it all $1.2 million at once, but doing smaller phases over the course of many years, maybe, to really get everything back to the way it's supposed to be. I think it's one of those situations where we really do want to reopen the road. I think we could do that far easier than we think, and phasing it seems to make sense, especially when you look at the different areas. And it would be interesting to sort of take on one phase and sort of really look at it and see if that works. Trying to think of what else I want to say. What else do I want to say, Heather? It was a lot of talking.
I don't know what else you want to say. But
I mean, I think, yeah, go ahead. I'd like to see what you have to offer at this moment.
No, I think you've done a pretty good job. I think it's just really clear from public input that we want the road back opened.
How many showed up to testify that they want the road back open?
It was a full house. I'm not sure if everyone was there.
Two residents on the road, property owners on the road.
Yeah.
And what was there, 10 people?
Yeah. It's a tough one, and it's been 2 years that I've been thinking about this road. And I've gone back and forth, back and forth. It's a lot of money for one road. There's not a lot of residents on it, but there's 1 mile away from downtown, there's an incredible road that's good for recreating. There's a lot of running, biking, fishing, all kinds of stuff right there. And it's the kind of place that people say in the future, like, people had a vision to keep this access to nature. Like, I just feel like if we close it permanently, we're going to lose a little something that I really love about this place. And that's what I keep thinking about. The money's it's a tough pill, and even many of the residents were struggling with that. But the other alternatives, I mean, a bunch of us, my alternative, there was no way I could support just doing the one alternative that I was looking at. I said, there's no way I can bring that forward as an alternative. It doesn't make sense.
What's that?
I wanted a bike pedestrian pathway there because it's the link to, everyone keeps talking about linking to East Middlebury. That's the link to East Middlebury without going on 116 or Route 7. That's the safe place to ride. But it didn't make sense just for a bike pedestrian. It does make sense spending that money for the residents who are along that road, and for the farmers who want to get there, and for the fishermen who want to get through, and the people that want to make that connection. So
Do we have right-of-way to do that, or you would have to buy right-of-way?
We would have to buy right-of-way, or some are
We would have
willing.
to, but the property owners have indicated that in exchange for keeping the road open, I think they're willing to.
Some are willing to work with us.
Give an easement or.
Yeah.
There's a lot of passion.
So, and then, was there the option to downgrade the road's classification considered?
You still would have to fix it in order to keep it open, because you have to be able to pass through people safely. So you'd still have to fix areas of it in order for that to work.
How much cheaper if you downgraded it and made it basically a one-lane road?
I don't know that it's an option, because the other thing that's not been brought up is the whole new municipal permits thing that the state is putting in place, and the hydraulically connected roads, and the fact that there's active erosion around this. The state is going to require us to fix it at some point, regardless of whether we want to or not, I think.
Fix the road or fix the erosion?
Fix the erosion, but you'll have to fix the road to fix the road as part of the erosion. Yeah.
On the good side of that, because of this design chosen, this is the one that they would be willing to fund. So there's a possibility for us to get money by doing that option from the state. So there's no guarantees. You'd have to apply for things, and that's where, again, the phasing would probably help. There's going to be a certain amount of money that's being set aside to upgrade and fix hydraulically connected roads. And so this is the one option that had the most funding available to help us pay for it.
Wow. And did you say that it's relatively easy, but it's expensive? Is that what you said, to do this project?
No.
Oh, I thought I heard you say that, but...
I might have, but that's not what I meant. It's easy to maintain it in the future is where I was going.
Okay.
I'm like, where was the easy part? The easier to maintain in the future, because with a 25 10-foot buffer, then it lets the river do what it wants and we just maintain the road.
Gotcha.
Because if we're still working with not putting that buffer back into place, then we're still Band-Aiding it every year.
Is there a high ground if you shifted it quite a distance where you don't have to worry about it eroding within the next 30 years?
It's all wetlands, so to shift it.
It actually goes down.
Yeah.
But it was low on the other side, too.
Yeah. To shift it was startling in so many ways and basically not permittable. We also looked at another.
I thought you were talking about shifting it so you had 25.
Oh, I thought you meant shifting it out of the lowlands is what you were saying.
Well, no, if you bring it in more than 25 feet, it's all.
Then it would impact the farmland too much, so. And again, it's all wetlands, so as soon as you get a little bit in, it's going to be a challenge, and there might be some places that somebody doesn't want to give us the right of way. But that's what we would want to fix the road in that one section while we explore everything else.
Can I make go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I want to just comment on one thing that bothers me about this conversation, that there aren't a lot of residents on this road. It still borders a lot of property, and that property in this particular case is agricultural land. And I don't think just because there's not residents there, that we should downgrade, that the property owners still need access to their fields. In addition, I like to think of when we had those storms that washed out North Branch Road. There's not a lot of residents on that road either. We didn't close that road for any longer than it had to be. We repaired the road with no issues, and that road mainly services Ripton residents coming down off the mountain. So, why we treat this road differently, I don't understand. It's a town road. We're obligated to maintain and repair it and keep it up. And I think we've made a good attempt, and now I think it needs to be repaired and opened.
I think that's a little bit too much simplification of it. We have tried, and it's consistently eroding. And so the question is, do you throw good money after bad, and how much is it servicing? And so I'm not saying that we wouldn't like to. The question is, you could throw 1.2 million at it, and 10 years from now, you're back in the same old spot because the river's shifting there, and we're having more. We just visited East Middlebury and saw that we're having these greater, more frequent
flood events,
hydraulic events, and so I'm just playing the devil's advocate and saying, have we looked at everything? Because you don't necessarily need a 2-lane road for a farm road. There's a lot of farm roads and that right now it's still functioning perfectly well as a farm road.
So if I could just comment, I'm not an engineer, but I do disagree with some of what the engineers have told us we can do on that road and the money we've spent on that road. And back in the spring or, last fall, I had requested that we have a site visit out because I would like the select board to see where we have made what I consider good money repairs and where I think we have not made good money repairs and see the difference. And then the other reason that I made the motion and suggested that we phase things in is because I think it's easy for engineers to draw a plan of what will work and hold the bank back, but before we commit 100% to, $1.2 million, let's do a small section with this method, and while we're researching and, maybe trying to find funding for the rest, let's see how what they've proposed holds up. Yeah. And if it doesn't hold up, then we haven't spent 1.2 on it. And, I would still argue that the key method works, and it's been proven out there. if it's done correctly. So,
It might be a next step is to do a
That's what
site
they're
visit.
proposing, yeah, that's what you're proposing, right?
so anyway.
I'm not necessarily proposing a site visit, I think Heather is.
No, I meant doing
Oh.
a section.
Yeah, by doing it, phasing it.
So,
in-
so if we,
Yeah.
so my motion and support from the committee, got support from the committee, and that was that if we're going to do any more money work on that road, use these new methods, evaluate how they hold up before we commit,
Right.
as we're considering committing the rest.
And I look at this, if we're gonna phase it, that it might be 5 or 10 years before we get that whole thing done. I mean, I'm probably 10, based on how much we can afford and what we can do priority-wise. But if we can get that road open and start working on that, and really take a look at it, and it proves itself,
When do you think this will come forward to us for?
So
Action.
the Infrastructure Committee did make a motion. The minutes just came out this afternoon, and I'll read that motion to you. Sealy moved to recommend to the Select Board to fix the section of Creek Road that needs to be fixed, to open it as soon as possible and as soon as we can afford it, by the method outlined in the study, so we can evaluate how this method holds up while we are in the process of phasing and exploring grant funding to do the remainder of the work recommended in Design 1. Kirk Fisk seconded the motion, which was approved unanimously by the committee.
Okay.
so it gives us that ability to do what we need to do, but also explore what that would look like in the long term and bring that back to the Select Board.
So this will come for us next meeting then?
So I think what the Infrastructure Committee would like is for you to give them the charge of looking at exploring grant opportunities and phasing potential.
Okay.
Because our charge is sort of done. And so until the Select Board says we can go look at fixing it as soon as possible and doing all the things Kathleen just read, we don't have that ability until the Select Board says, yeah, go ahead and explore that. So that's what we're asking for, to support the recommendation that the Infrastructure Committee made. And I can read it again if you need. Go ahead. She was.
I just think, I don't know what direction the state will go in this whole Clean Water Act, but if we decided to close that road, they may still require us to do work there to deal with the erosion, and then, then we don't have a road there and we're spending money, so.
I don't think anybody wants to close that road, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
It
it's a
just
question
sounds,
of
it's just hard, yeah.
Yeah. So that would not be a commitment to do anything other than to pursue, see what money is out there to help us.
Explore what the cost of opening the road back up would be, making a relatively small fix, and then look into the cost of phasing and grant opportunities for it.
Okay.
Correct.
I move that.
Okay. Thanks, Laura. I'll second.
Okay. Is the Select Board clear?
Don't ask me to read it back.
So are there questions or comments on the motion? Okay. All in favor of supporting the Infrastructure Committee's recommendation to pursue grant?
All the stuff that
Yes.
Kathleen said. Fix the
Pursue
section.
funding options to fix a section of Creek Road that needs to be fixed, to open it as soon as possible. Signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
Before we move on, though, I do want to note that this is probably the first example of the Select Board getting a project, a rather big project, and how does that fit into our retreat? So I think part of that is also thinking about, Kathleen will probably need to think about staff time and things like that, and we may need to decide at some point when it comes back of where does that fit into our priority list, and does it displace something? Does it go on the bottom? Does it not make that? but this is sort of the big test, and Kathleen's smiling at me because I'm always process girl, but I just want to make sure we don't miss our learning opportunity.
No, it's good that you're.
Okay. Engineering proposal on pump stations 3 and 9.
Do you want me?
You want to do that, Dan?
Sure, Susan's doing a lot.
I've talked enough for one night.
This is a proposal from Aldridge and Elliott Engineering Company. They're the ones who are also doing a lot of the work with our CSO issue with US EPA.
Combined sewer overflow.
Confined sewer overflows. And so we have a situation where Pump Station 3, which is just north of College Street, several hundred feet, and then Pump Station 9, which takes care of the Pulp Mill Bridge Road area, Weybridge Street. And so those two pump stations pump towards each other, and then tee right around Jane Court, and then go underneath the Otter Creek over to the main pump station on the east side of the creek. And so what we want to do is take a look at the hydraulics that these two pump station force mains have to see if we can make them function a little more efficiently, because what happens in heavy rain events, they both pump at the same time, and they can't get there at the same time. So the water can't get across the sag pipe. So what happens is Pump Station 9 overflows at times when Pump Station number 3 is running. And so this is a work to try to design a better functioning junction of those two force mains to see if we can eliminate some of the hydraulic friction at that T intersection. Mm-hmm. So that's what this proposal is for, $9,800 to do that, create a design,
Well,
and then eventually get it out to bid and so on and so forth.
So I'd like to make a motion to award a contract to Aldrich and Elliott for the engineering services to design improvements for pump station number 3 and pump station number 9 force mains for a lump sum of $9,800.
Second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, and then the municipal road grants in aid pilot project funding, Dan?
Excuse me. The first step in this process is to have the municipality sign a letter to get us in the queue for a grants and aid pilot program. The DEC has identified, as some of you spoke earlier, these hydraulically connected roads. Basically, I won't take too much time, but I gotta give you a little sticker shot. I just printed out what this means. You can just share that and then hand it back to me. Just quickly, the purple areas are what they are talking hydraulically connected. So basically, anytime there's a road that is around a storm sewer structure or a drainage basin or a creek or whatever, DEC has identified as a road segment that we will need to inventory and come up with a best management practice to deal with that situation. So this is a small grant being run through Addison County Regional Planning and Regional Planning Commissions around the state. The DEC has identified that Middlebury has 35 to 45 miles of connected roads, and they will toss towards our way $12,500 to come up with some of the solutions. We would have to have a $2,500 match, which can be in-kind work, could be the highway department, regrading ditches or installing stone check dams, so on and so forth. So it's a way to get the towns starting to get their heads wrapped around this general permit, which you'll see more of in the next year to 18 months. So the first step is to get our letter in to say we want to participate in this pilot program.
Yeah, why not? I'll move that we approve the town of Middlebury's participation in the municipal roads grants in aid project and sign our letter of intent.
I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It's kind of another unfunded mandate, partially funded, 12,500.
Yeah.
Can't take it anymore.
Somebody grow me those money trees.
You go.
Need a secret field of money trees.
I'd share.
Okay, Tom?
Don't tell anybody I'd share.
Good evening, folks. I'm Tom Murray with Vermont Gas, and I think you guys have met Karen Kotecki.
Hi, Karen.
Thank you for your time. By way of a quick update, as you folks know, we're rolling out services down here since April. We're coming up on, between customers that have converted and customers that have signed contracts, we're up close to 400 customers down here that are getting ready to sign up, so we're convert over, so we've got a lot of activity going to convert customers. Our efficiency team is down here doing audits. Anybody that signed up for Vermont Gas can get a free efficiency audit, and we've got a great program that gives 30% match for an efficiency project like insulating your home or your attic, and then we do zero interest financing. So that's a very successful program, and we offer rebates. So people that want to get new equipment, we offer, if you want to get high efficiency equipment, you get a rebate for that. So I didn't want to do a commercial, but just give you an update on where we're at in terms of our rollouts down here in Addison County, and we're in the process of starting to put the pipes in the streets of Virgins. So we'll be, focused on Middlebury now, but we'll be rolling out service in Virgins later on this summer, as well as New Haven too. So, but the purpose, I think, is to talk about the easements on the town property that Karen talked to you folks about a few weeks ago. I know Karen had sent a letter. There was a request to do a compensation for that easement, and over the years, Vermont Gas has rolled out a service to a bunch of communities in Chittenden and Franklin County, and we have not, to my knowledge, and asking around with people that have been at Vermont Gas for a long time, we haven't given compensation for easements for distribution in those for those communities, basically, because the communities see the value of offering the service. And the general state policy and practice that's been out there for utilities is that I was in the telecom sector for a long time, and you didn't want to, as a town, you wouldn't want to have a charge for your easements because you want providers to build out service, bring broadband, things like that. And we see our service as a value-added service for customers. Certainly, people want to take advantage of it. And I know you guys have other utilities in that existing corridor. We just crossed the parking lot there, and I'm not sure. I assume it's Green Mountain Power, and probably Comcast crosses that parking lot. And I don't know if you guys have a policy around charging for those easements. Does anybody know offhand if those have been compensated for in the past? So that was a question. I wasn't sure what the precedent was with regard to that. The other issue that came up in some of the questioning was around property taxes, and I know there was an email. Did that email clarify what we would be paying for property taxes roughly, and are there any questions around that? It's roughly a little over $200,000 a year that we'll be paying in property taxes. Beginning next year when it goes into the grand list, essentially. So it's a fairly significant amount of money that will be contributed to the community, and we're happy to do this as part of our obligation as a business entity in your community. So do you have any questions, or what can we do to maybe move this forward?
Well, you did ask our manager if there was a precedent for charging for other utilities using our easement. So is that right? We haven't.
We haven't.
So that was compelling to me, in terms of equity, that it would not make sense. I have to tell you that I'm a member of the select board that has opposed natural gas, from the get-go. So I have a broader objection to natural gas. So it's hard for me to respond to this, but I'm trying to see it from this other perspective too, in terms of where we are right now with this project. So I understand that. I was the one that asked the question to clarify the property tax, just to figure out what you meant by that, and how we arrive at at that amount for the contribution of property taxes, and it must be a relationship to the amount of land that you're...
Infrastructure,
yeah,
exactly, and
right.
the assessment of that infrastructure.
Yeah, the utilities, generally it's our net book value.
Yep.
So when we put this project into service, I think it was about $8 million. That includes the transmission pipe that comes down to north of town, and then all the pipes around town. So it's about $8 million.
And that will be as of December of this year.
When it kind of rolls into the grand list.
Yeah.
So that's and then there's a depreciation, so that factors down over a long period of time. That is the base. Towns can look at that and appraise it, if you will, and there can be a separate process around it. But there's a fairly well established methodology for that all utilities in Vermont are enrolled in. And there's also a floor, so you can only depreciate it down to a certain level, and then we stop depreciating that. I forget if it's 30 or 40%. A bit of in 40 years we'd hit that floor, and then you'd still collect property taxes on the chunk of that over the years going forward.
So I get that, and I guess I'm still struggling with it. Like even though there's this equity issue, because. From my perspective, the potential damage, to climate, to, I'm looking more life cycle of this. I think should we be considering that, in terms of a request for compensation? I think I just really want to state again, that I'm really concerned. I'm concerned about whether this is good, really, I hear you claiming that it's good for the community, but I know that you're providing energy audits and you're encouraging people to get efficiency, and we applaud that. That's the direction we want to see residents and business owners go. But I don't see it as the bridge fuel, and then we're going to be left with this infrastructure that, I just wonder about its future. And we do keep learning more and more about the damage of methane leaks, at all ends of the cycle of natural gas production and distribution. So I'm worried about that.
And I appreciate that, and I would like to put to you that we see Vermont Gas as one of the more progressive energy gas utilities in the country. We have one of the tightest systems in the country, so in terms of methane leaks in the system, we have been lobbying the EPA for stricter enforcement of leaks at the wellhead, if you will, that are way out in the natural gas fields, and making sure, because we think that as an industry it's our responsibility to do the right thing. We're going to have renewable natural gas in our system coming from the farm in Salisbury. Hopefully next year that project seems like it's back on track again. So for the folks in Middlebury, they'll be able to buy renewable natural gas. It's a relatively small portion, but it's certainly, we see it as a big step in the right direction. We're looking at hydrogen fuel cells because we think at some point there may well be a use for this infrastructure in a hydrogen economy. That's speculative because hydrogen hasn't taken off yet, but we want to be progressive and embrace these things, and we think that infrastructure can be valuable in the low carbon world, and we do, I understand your beliefs on it, but we think we have a valuable role as the cleanest fossil fuel, the last one standing, if you will, in terms of the transition to a lower carbon economy, and we think we can be a vital part of that.
So what about the news that we just heard about the New Haven pipe not being dug as deeply as it was supposed to?
Yeah, I mean, there was a section in New Haven where it was basically a wet area, basically, and a wetland area that we were in, and basically the federal code is to be below 3 feet, and so we're below 3 feet in that area. Velco wanted us to be at a certain standard, which was closer to 4 feet, and because of the wet area there that we were in, the construction company could just not get it down that deep. Basically, you're in a situation where excavators were basically in wet areas. And so we filed for a non-substantial change, which is pretty common. We've done a bunch of those in the project where you've got the project was approved, and in the course of construction, you have to make an adjustment because you're in the real world building it. You're going from an engineering document to an actual putting it in the ground. I think this is the fourth or maybe fifth non-substantial change that we've done. This one, by our standards, is the least. It's fairly insignificant in terms of it's fairly small in terms of what we're at. We meet the federal standard. Velco is okay with it. The Public Service Board said that, or department, I should say, said that it was safe where it is. They just want to understand, and A&R did as well. They just want to understand what was going on, that we couldn't get down to the depth. And it really was about, construction in a wetland area and trying to get a pipe. It's basically the pipe in there. It's actually coated with concrete to get it to get down to where it needs to. But it was just you're working in a wetland area. It was challenging, basically. That's what was going on.
Okay.
Ross?
Correct me if I'm wrong, this non-substantial change request, you're doing it about a year after you did the work, is that correct?
No, the work was done last fall.
Last fall, so about 6 months.
I don't know the exact timeline.
Because my understanding is that it was part of your CPG, and whenever you do something that's not in line with the CPG, you were supposed to let regulators know right away. And the only reason this even came up is because residents that were concerned about the safety of the pipe talked to the federal regulators and filed complaints about safety, and this came up, and now you're kind of going backtrack and saying, oh yeah, well, we didn't actually bury it as deep enough as we should have, but it's a minor thing and you're just trying to get it through. And this has kind of gone on quite a bit with this project, and like various violations, fines for various things, and it makes it hard to really trust what you say.
Is there a question in there? I apologize, but is there a question in there?
I don't think there was a
I think it's an observation.
It's an observation.
And,
All right, that's fine. I was just curious.
and I understand what you're saying about the quality you're saying that the pipe has for not having methane leaks and the potential for it carrying other types of fuels. And of course, that would be wonderful if we could go in that direction. And we need to accelerate that because, as you know, the global temperatures are alarmingly high. Like, it's the 4th year in a row that we're exceeding record. It is so serious, and I am really, really concerned about what we continue to hear about global temperature and methane's contribution to that. Really worried.
I had my questions answered. The text question was one of mine. And also, when I reread that Kathleen had already negotiated that they will remove the pipe if we request.
Relocate.
Yeah. Well,
exactly.
What does that? So, you might leave it in place then.
So I think we're talking about two different things here.
Right.
So you're
I
saying if we
was
ever
like, wait a minute.
The remove is if they stop using it. The relocate is if we need to use that tract of land.
Right.
Correct.
That they would relocate it to
Right.
another easement area.
Right.
And you'll do this without charge.
Correct.
Right. So
At our expense.
That works for
And
me.
typically with an easement, you wouldn't do that. It's perpetual. It goes with the land. But that was something in lieu of compensation that Benj, Putnam, Kathleen, and I had negotiated.
Right.
I think,
Hold 1 second, Ross. Are there any other questions of the board?
no, I'm thinking, I think we should move ahead with this.
Okay. Ross had one more thing.
Any question this time? So if at some point this distribution line gets abandoned and is not used, could the easement be returned to the town and not perpetually be in Vermont Gas's possession?
Yes, we would relinquish it back to the town.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Pleasure of the board?
You gonna do
So
it?
you had in your last packet a couple of proposed motions that I put up on the screen. If you want to take a look at those. To authorize me to work with council to finalize the easement for Bakery Lane and Mill Street based on the board's input. And secondly, to authorize me to work with council to prepare a notice of conveyance of real estate in accordance with 24 VSA 1061 for publication only upon satisfactory resolution of any concerns noted by the select board in its discussion.
So I'll make a motion, I'll read it over again, to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to work with council to finalize Vermont Gas easement deeds for Bakery Lane and Mill Street based on the board's input.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. So 5 and 1 abstention? 1 absent?
So I'll make a motion to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to work with council to prepare a notice for conveyance of real estate in accordance with 24 VSA 1061 for publication only upon the satisfactory resolution of any concerns noted by the select board in its discussion.
Second.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Abstention, okay. And you've so noted what our concerns are as far as removal, if, release of the easement and relocation if necessary.
And the relocation is already in the easement, and we'll just add the,
Release.
yeah,
Yeah.
the other.
Okay,
Yeah, I just missed it the first time when I read it, so.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Code of ethics,
So
is this an annual requirement?
this isn't. Has to do with our grant for the East Middlebury Flood Resiliency Project.
Oh.
And so this is required as part of their grant administration piece.
Okay. Pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to sign the Code of Ethics for Administration of FEMA and Vermont Department of Public Safety grants.
Second.
Wow.
They want to go home. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Okay, loan docs.
Okay. You have a couple of years' worth of loan documents to sign off on for all equipment purchases approved by the town meeting in 2015 and 2016. Town Treasurer Jackie Sullivan worked with the bank to prepare these documents, and the motions are provided in your packet.
So we have to do each one individually?
Please.
I'll start. I move that the board authorize the town of Middlebury to borrow $23,780 from the National Bank of Middlebury to fund the purchase of a 2017 Dodge Charger Cruiser as approved by the voters at town meeting on February 29th, 16.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So just a quick question. These are catch-up docs?
Mhm.
Okay. I was wondering, we're just now getting around to finance. Do we have that much money in the fund or, okay.
Want me to keep going?
Keep going.
I move that the board authorize the town of Middlebury to borrow $15,000 from the National Bank of Middlebury to fund the purchase of a 2016 Dodge Charger Cruiser as approved by the voters at town meeting on March 2nd, 2015.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I move that the board authorize the town of Middlebury to borrow $14,080 from the National Bank of Middlebury to fund the purchase of a 2016 Ford C-Max Hybrid as approved by the voters at town meeting on February 29th, 2016.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I move that the board authorize the town of Middlebury to borrow $30,612 from the National Bank of Middlebury to fund the purchase of a 2017 Dodge pickup 1500 as approved by voters at town meeting on February 29th, 2016.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I move that the board authorize the town of Middlebury to borrow $6,650 from the National Bank of Middlebury to fund the purchase of a 2017 B-Wise trailer as approved by the voters at town meeting on February 29th, 2016.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I move that the board authorize the town of Middlebury to borrow $17,160 from the National Bank of Middlebury to fund the purchase of a 2016 Graco line painter, or is it, I think it's Graco, line painter, as approved by the voters at town meeting on February 29th, 2016.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Wouldn't it be fun if the meetings were like that? We didn't have to like have all the.
No, that's not fun.
That's not very deliberative.
We rehearsed this actually before the
It would be
meeting.
kind of fun though, wouldn't it?
Thank goodness for Kathleen in the agenda notes, huh?
Okay, Kathleen, on the Agrimark.
Right.
agreement.
So our sewer usage agreement with Agrimark is expiring June 30th. And as we discussed last time in executive session, that we were going to work on further negotiations with Agrimark with the goal of having a new agreement in place by October 1st, 2017. And this authorizes me to sign an agreement extending us till October 1st, 2017.
I'll move that we authorize you to sign the 7th Amendment to the Agrimark sewer usage agreement.
Second, anyone?
Oh, second, sorry. I apologize.
All in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
1 minute you got 3 of us, and the next minute nobody was
Nobody.
here.
Work with me, people. More.
We had better let us sign this stuff before you
There's more
jump into the
coming. All
budget.
those things that we just went through, we gotta sign them off.
Great, thanks.
Really, each one.
It's a
huh?
paperwork
I'm
festival.
gonna come with a stamp next time.
Should have little cookies at the end.
I don't know if all of you were on the board when you used to have to do this for all the liquor licenses.
Yeah. I remember we did that once.
No, I don't
It was
remember.
very
Paper
exciting.
chain, huh?
I don't know if we were essentially fired from that task because it was,
And Webster was like, "Would you like me to do that for you?" Yes.
Okay.
Hey. I'm getting peer pressured.
Oh, we have to sign every one
Every
of the...
single one.
Everyone,
The loan.
everyone
It'll be
twice,
the most
yeah.
exciting moment in the for the audience. You just love our meetings, John. The cheese stands for
Yeah.
It's almost like a full workday, right, just in this meeting, John.
Took that after the third one. I forgot how to sign my name.
Oh, look at that. I even skipped the one behind it.
Feel like a pop star now, Victor?
So just that I'm doing this right, there's 3
almost like one of
places
those
to
books.
sign on this?
exactly.
yes,
There's
please.
3
Okay.
on each?
Yes.
Oh, and I only signed on 2. Oh my God.
Victor,
Then I've
See?
gotta,
pressuring me to hurry up.
But there's not an extra line on the 3rd one.
well, I'll just sign on the bottom. That's all.
So I don't think you signed the 3rd.
Let me see. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I see. so I've got to do,
So these two, you need to sign that third one.
and that one too?
No, did you do this one?
Oh, give me it back if I didn't.
Nope, here.
Okay, well, you sign it. No.
Okay.
Okay.
So that third one you need to sign.
Okay, those are
I'll
good.
take this.
Is that it? Did they all?
You have more.
Hmm?
There's more coming.
Okay.
Nice try, though.
And now I'm properly notified that I have to sign it 3 times.
Glad I'm signing someone else's loan documents.
It's like, yay.
Here you are, and one more.
This would be a lot if those personal loan documents.
I know. I did something for the Prudential Committee once, and it was through the state revolving loan fund and all this federal money, and it took 45 minutes to sign all the paperwork. It was really boring for everyone else at the meeting.
You have a pile?
I do have a pile.
Here you are. I'm ready for bed.
Kathleen will be like, everybody better have done it right.
Okay, here we are.
Thank you.
Okay, Kathleen, you got some good news on the budget?
Budget, we're still on target for the end of the fiscal year. Police Department estimates they're going to be slightly under budget at 99%. And also, we had a manageable winter, so Highway Department's going to be on target. So overall, we're looking good in the general fund. You may notice at the end of your FY17 year-to-date budget report, there is the Cross Street Bridge Fund showing the anticipated surplus that we had all expected. And so with that reminder, I contacted Aaron Guyette, the engineer of the Cross Street Bridge, and they are going to be working on a maintenance plan to submit to the Infrastructure Committee as the first step to getting some public input on what we can project going forward for surplus and what we might want to do with any surplus that we have. So that is on the radar screen coming up in August.
That's good, Kathleen.
Okay.
So the water revenue, does it just kick in a little bit later? I saw that.
So there's one more billing outstanding
That's
for
fine.
that, right? And we're also eagerly awaiting that billing because there has been some estimates done as part of the meter reader changing out, so there may be some adjustments made to some of those bills that were estimated.
Tax rate?
Tax rate. So on March 6, 2017, voters approved the general fund operating budget of $10,321,456 for FY18, with $7,106,106,034 to be raised by taxes. Additionally, at the polls on March 7th, voters approved several special articles. Article 6 to increase the select board stipends by $7,400 in total. Article 7, police K-9 for $30,610, and Article 9, Addison County Restorative Justice Services for $2,500, and Article 10, Addison County River Watch Collaborative. You also have the $40,000 of assessed value for our veterans. So, all in told, all around, we're looking at a projected tax rate of 98.22 cents, an increase of under a half a cent over FY17's tax rate of 97.80 cents. So we had anticipated that the tax rate would go down just under a fraction of a cent. And with the addition of the special articles, we're up just slightly.
So that means we need to look at trimming, obviously, if we're wanting to, not a lot.
No, it's all set.
The voters approved this budget.
Okay.
This is it. Because we had already done the budgeting and then they approved the extras, and this is what the rate is with all the extras. So
We're basically just confirming what was voted.
Yeah.
So this is a mathematical exercise.
And for next year, we get to start all over again this summer, so.
And we don't, and because the downtown improvement district is not
the petition process
confirmed to
hasn't
continue
taken
to
place
go,
yet.
yeah, okay. All right, so maybe a motion from the board?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to set the municipal tax rate for 2018 fiscal year at 0.9822 cents per $100 of assessed value.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Check warrants.
I reviewed them, they're in good order. So I move that we approve the total expenditures in the amount of $337,395.15, consisting of $227,477.68 in accounts payable and the rest in payroll for the period from June 14th to the 27th.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Kathleen?
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add. Board member concerns?
I'm good.
We talked earlier about the hearing level in this room, and I was reminded of it in the back of the room, and I know I have a personal issue because I have hearing problems as well, and I'm just wondering, we talked about the possibility at one time of seeing if we could have a kind of audio system here that made it easier for everyone to hear, I think.
So we've heard that from several people, and just today, Kurt Broderson here met with Chris English to talk about some possibilities going forward. One of the special difficulties here is that we're on MCTV, and we'll have to consider that
So
interface
feedback.
as well.
Yeah.
Can create a lot of trouble.
Okay. Good point.
That's all.
I don't have anything.
First, I would like to welcome the language school in Middlebury.
Mm-hmm.
They're here, and I hope they have a good semester. And one of the concerns I heard from a couple of citizens is when they watch our live, your side of the mic either doesn't work or they can't hear well.
That's why I placed it right in front of my face
Yeah,
this
they
time.
say it's hard to, even on the whole, it's not a very clear audio for them, but your side is worse. They say they can't hardly hear anything.
Okay. Laura?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned sound, because I was going to say that. I don't know why it makes it harder for MCTV if we have amplification here as well. Is there a reason why that you know?
The equipment can interfere with each other.
Okay.
So I'm sure Kurt could do a much better job explaining that, but he's on duty, so. But yeah, it basically comes down to, you have to be careful with the equipment, and this equipment, it's very easy to interfere with, is what Dick used to talk about. So it would be buying some special equipment to make that work for both ways.
I would assume the technology is there, but it is unfortunate when someone is sitting in the back row who can't hear, and it's, I mean, it is a meeting where you want everyone to be able to hear what everyone is saying. Now, I realize in my own case, maybe I should deal with my vanity and get a hearing aid, but beyond that, I think you need, it seems to me, it should be possible to hear each other and to hear people speaking without having them shout. And,
Well, that's one thing, but they're also having trouble just hearing us at home on MCTV, which means we need to be speaking up in front of the mics, and maybe we could help each other.
Well, that's certainly very important, but I think the problem is that we need to have interaction with each other and with people in the room, and if we don't have that, we're not going to have a discussion that's going to make sense for anyone hearing it in their homes. I mean, I think the two things go together, but it doesn't make any sense if you can't hear each other in the room. I think that needs to be basic if we're going to have a meeting where we talk to each other. I mean, that's really the whole point of having these meetings, and so that I don't want to sacrifice one from the other, but I think it's very important that we not say, well, it's because of the other that we don't have, that we can't hear each other talk.
Yeah.
And,
You can do it, it's just more expensive.
Yeah.
Always.
I think when they see the mic, they assume that there are
We're
speakers here.
amplified.
That's what they think. When we are speaking in this, they think that something's not working, that's why they're not here.
Well, it's true, but I mean, you know, people can't hear, and I can't hear, and when someone speaks there, or sometimes when someone's on the other side of the room and I can't hear, and I think it's important if we're going to exchange views and opinions that we know what each other is saying. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose of having a deliberative body that meets regularly and talks about these things.
So it sounds like they're looking into options on that. I do think it was maybe the issue was exacerbated by the noise in the audience tonight. The size of the audience and the noise that was being generated. And I think early on it was worse, and that's why, because I do think I saw them leaning in trying to hear early on, but then it was almost like they got comfort with the noise level, and maybe some of that was we were speaking up a little louder. I don't know. But, so okay, well we'll see what they can come up with for ideas. So.
And then the other thing is process. So I just wanted to apologize about like the bypass there. I think that so often it just comes in these ways that you don't think, and it doesn't mean that it's not going to go to infrastructure, but you just forget the routing sometimes.
Yep.
So I just wanted to say that, and I concur, you know, about the sidewalks and prioritizing them, and that we do have a lot of maintenance to do, and even that is almost more important than new sidewalks, you know, that we have enough money set aside for those things. And even today I had another little report about needing to repair sidewalk in front of the post office area there where we're doing a lot of construction. So I am aware of that, and just wanted to echo.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay, the only thing I have is a thank you to our listening audience for all the patience with the projects that we've got going on, and you know, Jim Gish has been working really hard to get the word out to the community, and I do think if anybody's listening and is not on our listserv, I would encourage you to get on our listserv if you have access to email, because there's a daily update that is very hard to replicate in any other format, and keeps people aware of what's going on and gives you a heads up of the next day's work, and that's going to continue through the entirety of the bridge project. So with that, we do have a need for executive session. Susan, if you could take us into it.
Sure. In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of a legal matter would clearly place the Select Board at a substantial disadvantage, because the Select Board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the legal matter in public.
One second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss a legal matter under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.